Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order and welcome you all to the Coeur d'Alene School District 271 Special Board Meeting of April 29th, 2024. Would everyone please rise, and together we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our participants for this afternoon. Starting at my far right is Ms. Marian Southwick, Clerk of the Board, Dr. Sean Hawker, Superintendent. To my left is Ms. Leslie Bierke, Vice Chair, Ms. Heather Tenbrink, Board Member, Ms. Allie Anderton, Board Member, Mr. Jimmy McAndrew, Board Member, and I'm Rebecca Smith, Board Chair. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the very start of this meeting. Please sign up to speak on the sheet provided at the entrance door. Comments may also be submitted to the board via email at trustees@cdaschools.org or in writing through the clerk. Thank you. This afternoon, is there a motion to approve today's agenda? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, agenda is approved. Today, we've got a number of things on our agenda. We will start with public comment, and then we will have some discussion in general. Dr. Hawker will present us with some things under our board information, and then we will consider some different action items farther along in our time. And then potentially, we'll see about some additional information. So that's our things today on our docket. All right. Okay. A few things about public comment. Today, I want to remind the public that while this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that takes place in public, it's not a meeting with the public. It's a meeting of the board to conduct district business. The board does allow a public comment period for district-related items, which is limited to no more than 45 minutes total unless a majority of the board votes to extend the time frame. Those wishing to address the board during this public comment period are limited to one comment, not to exceed 3 minutes. And at the designated time, you'll be invited up to the podium. Please state your name, your city of residence. Please keep in mind that while board members will not respond to public comment, if you have handouts for the board, our clerk would love to receive those. If I determine that an individual statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, or repetitive, I may terminate that speaker's privilege to address the board. If you have additional comments that you'd like to be presented to the board, you may provide these comments in writing to the clerk or through our email. We've received a tremendous amount of public comment over the last few weeks regarding all of our budget topics. And so we'd like to thank the community, our teachers, our staff, our students, as well as all of those who care about 271. So I'd like to invite up today Lydia Kirkbride.
Okay, hi, I'm Lydia Kirkbride from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I'm a freshman at Lake City High School, and one of my favorite parts about the school structure is the block schedule that we have. My whole life I've been passionate about theater and music, and I spend much of my free time and now school time doing both. This year I even found a love for speech and debate through my many elective choices. With the new budget cuts our district is facing, we have been considering going to a 4-day work week. This makes it very likely that our block schedule will be changed. With this, there is not only barely enough time and opportunity for electives, but a lot of the classes themselves are being taken away. I want to voice my opinion and the opinions of my many teachers and fellow peers in agreement that we should keep this beneficial school schedule at LCHS. The first and obvious reason is the increase in electives the block schedule allows. My English teacher, Shelley Blank, said that she was on the scheduling committee for 2 years and considered many different types of school schedules. After consideration and research, it's shown that the block schedule allows greater depth of relationships with students and teachers, and it's powerful because it provides space for students to explore different interests. This can even help those who are disengaged find a place where they fit in. This is good not only due to the opportunities the electives provide, but it even affects the relationships between students and their school and teachers. If this block schedule was taken away, that would be removing a vital piece of the way Lake City has developed its unity and excellence. Another big issue with this is that our curriculum is shaped around the current schedule. Any teacher who has taught at Lake City in the past 25 years has utilized the block schedule. This means all current lesson plans and means of instruction would need to be entirely altered to fit this new plan. On top of this, all current students of LCHS have built their 4-year plans based on using this structure. This is going to make it so difficult, especially for sophomores and juniors, to acquire all of the graduation credits they need, as their plan to achieve this is just no longer existent. This is such a huge change for students and staff at Lake City alike and will be so difficult to adapt to. Along with this, every single person I've talked to about this is in agreement with keeping the current schedule. All of my fellow peers love the elective opportunities this provides and how many classes we all get to take. Getting rid of this changes the way half the district's high school students are rounding out their educations and earning their credits. My teachers, Shad Frazier in band, Daniel Bell in theater, and Caleb Drexel in debate, are all in agreement that without the block schedule, education will be made so much more difficult, not only for electives, but for core classes as well. In short, we at Lake City all love the block schedule. I understand that budget cuts need to happen, but our schedule is not where the changes should be made. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Bill Green.
Hello all again. Madam Chair, trustees, Dr. Hawker, Ms. Sedgwick. I want to just talk briefly about the Bora situation. I know that this is on a lot of people's minds and on your minds a lot, and it's a very difficult kind of deal to think about. And I guess I just had a thought this afternoon to come in and invite you to look deeply into your hearts and souls, maybe ask for some divine wisdom, take some quiet time, and just try to listen for maybe some new idea, some new possibility, some creative thing that might pop into your mind to find a way to not have to leave Bora back and not have to leave Bora altogether. I'm not planning on leaving it altogether, but it's just a kind of a very special community that I know about, and a lot of the parents, a lot of the kids, a lot of the teachers, even the neighbors around that area are very attached to the fact that there's a school there, that there's young children there, that there's all these new ideas that's happening because kids are learning and kids are the future. And it's just an amazing opportunity for lots of people to observe and be aware and be grateful for the work and the love and the energy that goes in to helping kids learn, because that's kind of what the whole thing is about. And I know that's the truth for all of you. And I know that the people in administration have scratching their heads really hard to try to figure out a way to do cuts without touching anything in the classroom. Anything in terms of kids, anything in terms of teachers, anything in terms of parents and siblings and grandparents and generations of folks that rely on the effort and the love that goes into education, the kids in our area. So I know that that's a top priority, and I hope that if possible, there's some new creative thing you can come up with to help that not happen for Bora. And if it does, the other thing I wanted to just encourage you to think about is for teachers in classified, certified, classified, everybody has to go to somewhere else. If that could be a possibly very seamless process, so that all teachers have to do is pack their certified bags and all their goodies on their classroom wall. All the classified people have to do is pack their good art and their tools and go to another school without having to do any kind of, like paperwork process of having to make sure that they have a job or not. I don't know if that's even in the works, but I'm just thinking that if I were in that position, I would certainly hope that if I was going to go to another school, it would be an easy process to do, and not one that's more cumbersome and more questioning about who I am, what my qualifications are. Because all those people have been working there, and you all know how good they are. So I don't even know if that's even your thought. It just popped into my head to say, make it as easy as possible if you have to do it. And thanks again for all your hard work, and I know that you guys want to do the best for kids and teachers. And I've heard it said that some people in high administration in years past had a very strict personal policy that before they cut anything in the classroom that affected a teacher or a student, they'd find some way to cut something out of the top administration tiers. And you guys are creative. I know you can figure that out if there's any way to do it, and that you will if there's any way to do it. But I just had this idea to come up and encourage that today. So thanks again for your help, all your work and your dedication to the kids and the teachers, and God bless you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Green. All right. Trustees, as we set this agenda here, we gave space just at the beginning for discussion, maybe additional questions or things that needed to be addressed. And if I could lead with that, there's one piece that for me that keeps coming up that we haven't talked a whole lot publicly about, and that's the facilities funding. And so I wanted to be able to ask Shannon, I guess, just about that right away, because I would hate to, when we see that funding eventually, having not discussed and maybe just asked a few questions about that. So Shannon, I don't know if we could start with that maybe, and maybe what we know right now.
Yeah, there's
Coeur d'Alene might be
not a
receiving
lot
and-
that we know.
Right, I know.
There's a lot of estimates that we've been given, but as of today, the State Department of Public Finance has given their, they have posted of recommendations on how to budget, and there's a big unknown on the how to budget for the new facilities fund, and they say by around August they'll give you estimates of how to budget. What was shared though during legislation, and this was just, people's estimates all around, so this is not, this is not the work of the State Department of Ed, so they can't confirm the amounts, but it was shared that it would be around $36 million. And that can be for the Coeur d'Alene School District, and that can be taken over 10 years as annual payments or as a lump sum. With the facilities bill, there's a couple things that were kind of ended with that. Lottery is no more, so that was repealed, and those lottery funds will be used to help, with the sale of the bonds and help a little bit with the facilities fund. And there's no bond equalization levy funding. We got a small portion last year, so not a huge hit for us. But what it means for us when there's no more lottery, well, we get about $1 million now with the lottery. So that's a reduction just for our regular state revenue. So if you look at that over a 10-year term, that's about $10 million out of that $36 million. That's not really new, that we really will need to rely on for current operating revenues and expenditures. So if this $36 million estimate is kind of on the dot and pretty realistic, we would be looking at $26 million of new revenue for facilities. One great catch with that, if you take the lump sum, you can invest in it, and any interest earnings and investment earnings can be used for facility expenditures as well. So that's a great plus.
And if I could add also, the state has cautioned us that if you choose to take the lump sum, right now they couldn't distribute the full lump sum to all districts anyway. So it may be another year down the road. They think that there's enough for you to get your 1 year of your lump sum, so maybe $3.6 million or so next year in August, but not the full $36 million at this juncture. It takes some time for them to sell the bonds and generate that scenario. So I do think it'll be sometime later next year where we might be able to recapture the rest of that one-time funding, and that is our recommendation to go after the one-time chunk if you rather than take the annual pieces of that funding. Does that make sense?
Yes. And then just to be clear, that money is specifically for maintenance, deferred maintenance.
Yep.
all of
Yeah,
that.
it can be routine
Just
or
wanted
deferred,
everybody to
but
be
just
aware of that.
maintenance. Yeah.
Okay.
Shannon, can it be, and I know you might not have the answer, but can it be like new maintenance projects? I mean, not
Yeah.
the things that are maybe not currently on our deferred maintenance list, but that might need to be.
I think that is definitely going to be allowable. And if you read the bill, it's not super. It's broad in the fact that maintenance, routine maintenance, things that your lottery has already covered, you can still cover that. There are tons of training and webinars scheduled by the state, and they actually just canceled this week's because there's so much information they don't know yet. So I think we're going to hear a lot about the facility bill in the next month to up until August. But right now, there's just not a whole lot of answers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Additional questions right now, or Dr. Hawker is going to work us through maybe some updated budget kind of things. Do you want to? Let's start with that. Thanks.
Thanks, Shannon. Okay, yes, let me pull it up here on my screen too. Shannon will have our spreadsheet. You're familiar with this this document. I want to kind of walk through each of it and give you the latest recommendations. Our hope, our plan is later on tonight, we have 3 action items, and the approval of this document as the final presentation to the board will be one of those considerable considerations on that action item. Is everybody seeing it?
This is the same one we already had. It hasn't changed.
It has tweaked a titch since maybe our last presentation, so
Is that in our board packet?
it is.
Then we don't have
Okay,
it.
you have it right here. Let's make sure you're seeing a current copy. You
Okay,
can play
because the
with
one we
yours.
have
You
is
can
not-
play with yours along the way. We've gone in and added even more detailed for this so that so it can be extremely transparent. So, can you zoom that down a little bit?
So we need to log out and go back in. So is he sending it to us?
Yeah, it's in your inbox.
Oh, it's in there.
Is it in the inbox?
It's in your inbox now.
Okay. All right. So I will, based upon our current picture and our $6 million anticipated shortfall, with the options that I'm going to walk through, we end up with a scenario of almost break even. We're still about $5,000 short of meeting our zero balance goal. And I think to pause right there and just reiterate that what this will mean, if you recall even our current working budget this year, it is financially prudent to always budget 1 to 2% of your budget every year in what I'm going to call discretionary funds. It is impossible with a $100 million budget to estimate exactly our student growth or decline in enrollment. It's impossible at 100% to estimate, how many new students might move into the district that require some special needs services that we currently could not provide with our current caseloads, and it would require us to hire additional staff. So it's just always important to have that built-in reserve fund into your budget. In the first example that I showed you a couple weeks ago, we had set a very conservative $1 million reserve budget. This budget right here and this proposal does away with that. It creates a scenario where there is no budgeted reserve at this juncture. Now we can certainly change that as we go through tonight, but it's to say that our expectation would be to utilize a portion of our anticipated one-time funding that we will receive from the state later this summer, that we anticipate to be around that $3 million, $3.1 million, as we shared with you 2 weeks ago. And we would use maybe 1.5 of that as a placeholder, knowing that throughout the year next year, there's a strong likelihood that you'll need to use those monies that are in that reserve. So I want to just make sure you're clear that these recommendations here that are the most recent and updated include building this budget today with virtually none. You can see on the spreadsheet, there is no built-in reserve, and you'll need to dip into your district reserve. So there's no, I should say, let me make sure I'm using the right language to keep you from being confused. There's no built-in contingency in this budget, and it will require you to utilize very likely a portion of your reserve. Now, we could get lucky and maybe we have hundreds of new students that move in this summer that we didn't anticipate on. So again, you just don't know. But I would say our job is to present to you a conservative estimated budget, and then we'll certainly hope for the best.
Is this based upon, I'm sorry. Is that based upon 1.5 or 1.55?
So this is based on none of the allocated reserve
Okay.
budget money, but the reserve budget money, as we shared with you last time, the $3 million, our recommendation is to put that into your reserve account. And I thanks Jimmy for that question, because I think it's important for our community and our audience and our trustees to truly understand our $6 million reserve fund that we have today in our budget. It is already bare minimum. The way school funding flows, there are many things with federal programs, for instance, that you have to spend the money first before you get the money reimbursed. There are many things, our state funding comes to us in 5 chunks throughout the year, and you don't get your first chunk until August. And so, we pay our employees, our teachers, over a 12-month period of time, and so you've got to have money over those summer months as well. We are right down to a very concerned scenario with our reserve budget, where anything that goes on that's unanticipated. Do you remember the flood that we had at Fernan Elementary School this year? Granted, insurance will cover that expense, but as you can imagine, insurance may take 3 to 6 months to pay that check and reimburse us. Our contractors don't wait 3 to 6 months for their paycheck. We have to front that money and pay them, and then have the money come back from insurance. So that is just one example to share with you why it's so important that we have a reserve budget and national recommendations. Our Smarter School Spending formula, or Smarter School Spending program. Thank you, Shannon. It recommends 2 months. And we are less than 1 month in our current budget. And if you look at the reserve accounts of your neighboring school districts, they have larger reserve accounts than we do, and we are a district twice as big as some of them. So it's very important that we realize that existing reserve is just that without that reserve, you will be needing to expend even more expenditures in some sort of short-term loans to bridge the gaps over summer months.
Shannon or Sean, either. What percentage is our reserve at now? I know we have less than a month, but how much less than a month currently? It was like
It's
0.8.
6%.
Pardon?
Oh, less than it's at 6%. So a month.
I think I recall you in the past saying it doesn't even cover 1 month's
Point-
expenditures. 0.8.
0.8,
That's
yeah,
the number I was
around
looking
0.8.
for. Now, my question, knowing that, is how much would we need to take from that pot of money, the 3.1, to get it up to 100% that would cover a month?
So when I
that make
presented
sense?
to you the 3 million, it was at 10%, so it was about 1.1
So
million.
1.1 added.
Or 1.1 months, yeah. So that
So
3
if-
million is going to get you to your month.
The whole 3 million would take
Correct.
us to get to the
It's
to
1.1
1
months.
month?
Yes.
Okay.
So
I did not.
thanks for pointing that out. So if
3%.
we obligate using half of that money right now to kind of try to soften the blow, so to speak, on our budget reductions for this year, it will move you in the right direction, but it will not get you to even 1 month still. You'll be still a little short, but you will be in
How
a better
much short?
situation. Well, you'll be sitting at about roughly $7.5 million, which would be, I'm going to say,
So
about
0.9?
7.5%, and you need to be 9. Does that make sense to the board? Okay, let me.
Well, I
Let me
think we're
make sure that-
talking different numbers. We're talking percentages and point net. We currently have 0.8 of a month's expenditures in our reserve,
Which
correct? I'm
is
gonna try to stick
6%
with
of
that.
operating revenues, yeah.
If we used half, just say 1.5, what would that take us to? 0.9 to 0.85, since it won't take us to the full month? That's what I'm trying to
Yeah,
get
I
at.
haven't calculated the month span. It's going to be an
Best
8%. It'll be an 8% reserve, so it'll take us to, it'll still,
Sorry, I didn't.
doing points
I'm
now.
just trying to wrap my head around it too.
I can get that for you, Leslie.
thank
Yeah,
you.
I can't calculate in my head.
I know,
sorry.
it's a bit, and they're big numbers,
So if
so
you
I
got
appreciate
100
that.
million, we're at 8,333,000
Right,
a month. So we're at 6 right now.
6 million. 6%.
They're both the same.
6% and 6 million.
6 million.
Same thing.
It's easy on a.
Yeah, it's
$100
good. It's
million.
$100 million
Okay.
for that.
Thank you,
sake.
everybody. Thank you.
Okay, so
May I ask a question really quick?
Please do.
So can, this last year, where did that number, did we ever have to spend from it? That reserve?
This current year?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
And what did that number get down to?
So our working budget is the deficit is around 700,000.
Okay.
So it went from like 6.8 million to a little more than 6 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you had mentioned about potentially showing us a little bit of the cash flow.
Yep. I'm working on that. That will be with budget development. Spread very thin. So
Right. I can imagine.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that 1.5? Does that significantly keep you up at night, or are you? We're all up at night, right?
That's for sure. I think we'll be able to manage. There's a lot of unknowns, but there is a little bit of money left in Fund 430 that we could uncommit. Pretty much the board would have to pass another resolution to uncommit those funds and put them back into the general fund. So there are some things that we can do.
And will you update them on what
What is
fund?
Fund
430?
430. It is our capital facility fund. When we had a $5 million savings from ESSER, it was a one-time savings. The board committed that $5 million to Fund 430 for deferred maintenance projects. But now knowing that there's some more facility funding, we could potentially, that could help us out a little bit. I really need to get a finalized budget to be able to tell you my best recommendations, and just spread super thin. And I want to be able to present some solid numbers to you guys, but we'll be able to see kind of what we can creatively do, and that will at least get us out of any trouble for next July. But no, I think that 1.5, it's not, I think we can manage. But again, having less than a month of operating expenditures to cover is,
So what are the guardrails that we can put in place? Because, I mean, every budget is built to stay within.
Mm-hmm.
What guardrails can we put in place? I mean, it's essentially just hyper monitoring this thing and us being super proactive. I mean, my fear is we'll end up in this, or all of our fears that we'll end up in this space again.
Yep.
What are the proposals to mitigate that as much as possible, other than not sleeping?
Oh, yeah. Well, honestly, after we get through this night and we get a budget developed, however it shakes out, there's things that are out of our control as far as our fixed costs and utilities, but I think we always need to go in with a adopted budget plan. If it gets worse, look to our prioritized reductions and what was next. And even those prioritized reductions often will probably change year to year too, but always be, as a board, be able to have that plan B ready to go until we can get comfortable with those, with our reserves, and make a little bit of investment each year to boost them until a comfortable amount. But they're part of the Smarter School Spending Program. There's some recommendations on board policy, also of, a board agreeing what a balanced budget means and what efforts you take when you don't meet that balanced budget. There's tons of templates and tools and recommendations. So I would love to do that work with the board to really, define what our goal is for a balanced budget.
Any additional?
We can circle back anytime there's any questions that pop up, and we'll just, if it's okay, we'll keep moving through the spreadsheet so I can give you the latest updates and modifications from last time and review what we did recommend last time as well. And then at the end, again, there's no action on this at this time. And then we'll transition into a couple of your specific action items. It's just important to remember that with this proposal as presented, You are not building in any contingency funding, so therefore you will very likely need to use 1.5 to 2% of your reserve account to cover, because we can't budget any tighter than a couple percent with the unknowns that we have. Okay. So with that, let me just briefly highlight where we're at as per our last conversation. Our areas reduction, you can see those first, 7 items have not changed. Those are items where we do plan to reduce. The 19 positions are primarily attrition. The custodial vacancies are contracts. You can see the 5% building budget reductions, the early learning center lease, some PD sub costs, any and everything that we could identify right off the bat in a level 1 first phase scenario, those have been turned on. So that you can see that they're being added to the spreadsheet so that you can see your bottom dollar, whether there's a surplus or a deficit still remaining. The calendar items are purposefully left unblocked. If you choose to remain with our current 5-day calendar, those would stay unmarked. If you choose to select one of those two, there's your anticipated savings for the 4-day and the 160-day calendars. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that at this time, because we'll come back later and have the calendar specific conversations. Then you can see curriculum would be reduced by $500,000, and that takes curriculum right down to the bare minimum that we need in order to replenish our existing usable material this year. And that also includes the recent adopted English language arts curriculum that also saved lots of money. It would be more expensive had you have not adopted that a month or two ago when you did that versus staying with the program that we currently have. So that includes all of that. That's a $500,000 savings to curriculum, and believe me, if we could make that $550,000, we would have made that recommendation. It is that tight. It is down to the very maximum that we can reduce that. We do have the repurposing of one elementary school, and we have that check mark on there. If you choose not to utilize that check mark, you'll see that we'll have to identify that $1.1 million from additional phase cuts. But as we recommended last time we met, we left that item checked. I wanted you to see that. We did not check any reductions of elementary extracurricular activities like strings or track or vocal programs at this time, nor did we recommend any reductions in our middle school extracurricular activities, or even all of our extracurricular activity stipends and things that we pay people to do. Those were options that we discussed last time, but they are left unchecked. And you can see we ranked those as a phase 4 reduction. So then that brings us into our specific staffing reductions per phase. And you can see that phase 1, we have every item checked. There are some changes in this phase from the last time that we met, based upon the communications that we continue to receive and trying to make as many adjustments as we possibly can in all areas of importance. And I can't reiterate, obviously all of these conversations are very difficult by everybody. And so I'm very appreciative of everybody's input with this work to get us to where we are today, despite the very difficult conversations and challenges each of this presents. The crossing guard elimination as difficult, I guess I don't know how else to say it. I'd love nothing more than to say, come on, you have a $100 million budget, you ought to be able to find $30,000 to keep crossing guards. But every penny matters in this specific recommendation. We are going to rely on other avenues to try to meet those needs. We are very hopeful that we have very active and involved PTA and PTO organizations, other group service organizations that can help us with that. We also are in the process of developing, enhancing our safety busing route pickup, where maybe we would pick up kids inside that 1.5 mile walk radius in the event they had to cross a busy street, like we know some of our schools are near. So we would do everything we can, obviously, to keep that, keep all of our activity getting to school as safe as possible, but we will be relying on volunteers and parents to help pick that up to save that $30,000. We would be reducing one occupational therapist. If you remember last time, we had 4 nurses that we were planning to reduce 4 nursing positions. 2 of those nursing positions are not filled. They've not been filled all year. We have updated that to reduce 3 nurses. So that would be 2 of them that are unfilled vacancies and 1 that is currently in the seat. But I cannot obligate an opportunity here, but I had a very good supportive meeting with the new CEO from Kootenai Health about a week and a half ago, and I asked him point blank if he would be able to help us perhaps fund a nursing position so we can keep as many nurses as we can. And again, although we don't have a signed done deal contract in place, it was a very optimistic conversation. So I feel like the door is very open to have that happen. Right now we would plan on reducing 3 nurses, which is 2 unfilled positions and 1 filled position. And if we are successful in getting that contract with Kootenai Health, we would not have to reduce any of our current nurses that are in the spots today. And
What is our current nursing staffing? How many positions do we currently have?
We currently have then 10. Is that right, Eric? I think we have 10 nurses with 2 unfilled for a total of 12.
Okay.
All right.
So
Thank you,
Kate,
Eric.
Good job reaching out to them.
So yeah, we're very excited about that opportunity and hopeful. That ball is rolling. Our director of nursing has got that started as well. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that. But that's a change from the last time we met. So I wanted to make sure we specifically pointed that out. And then the last item in phase 4 is the reduction of 4 psychologists, and it's important to highlight to the board. Those are 4 vacancies right now in that position that we have had to fill through other contracts from people that live out of state or whatever. So we would be reducing those contracts and eliminating those contracts and retooling our psychologists' workload. But today, none of those 4 positions are employees here that reside in Coeur d'Alene and show up in our schools every day and work with our kiddos. So that references phase 1. I think what I'd like to do is just kind of keep moving through the phases, and then I'll bounce back and address any questions that you may have. Phase 2, you can see that we would be reducing some classroom assistant hours by a couple. That's 10 hours of library assistants per building, and 2 secondary office staff, and also district office certified administrative classified to the tune of about 3.7 FTE or $250,000 in total, and 3 speech and language pathologists. And again, those are current positions that are vacated that we contract out with, and we spend an exorbitant amount of extra money on those contracts, and we would reduce those contracts, and those are being filled right now by speech and language pathologists that are not here in Coeur d'Alene and not in our schools physically with our students. They provide a teletherapy sort of service. So that's our 3 recommendations for staffing reductions in phase 2.
Can I ask a question real quick?
You betcha.
On the contracts that we have for the, is it the psychologists?
Yes.
How much are those currently utilized on the telehealth? Like, are they utilized a lot? Are they just utilized once in a while? But that would be that's probably good for us.
Thank you,
know
Frank.
that.
And same with the other one, too.
Yes. Any of the ones that we
Any contract.
contract out for.
So what is your question exactly?
So on the school psychologist, looks like maybe speech and language is the same thing, and perhaps when we get to the well, maybe not the counselors, but how much of those contracted services through telehealth, or I guess they're all telehealth,
Yeah.
how much are those utilized in addition to the ones we currently have
Also,
on
like, how many
site?
do we have currently?
No, how much are
Kind
they
of-
utilized outside the ones we already have on staff?
Oh, they're fully utilized.
Fully
Yeah.
utilized?
Yeah, there's 2.5,
That's what I was getting at.
2.5, two full-time school psychologists do teletherapy and one half-time.
That's the telehealth?
Yeah.
So they are fully utilized. So what's
Yes.
that going to do to our current people on the ground if we get rid of those?
Well,
That's.
so yeah, I know. So basically what's going to have to happen is that we have 8 in person,
Okay.
but not all 8 are full-time either. So some of them are 0.8, some are 0.9, I believe. So we'll have to figure that piece out. Basically what's going to have to happen is that we're going to have to prioritize their job duties, and because they're so involved in each school. So each psychologist, I mean, we've had the pleasure of being able to have some psychologists like to one school only, and they really get ingrained in that school. So we're going to have to kind of give them another school, which will kind of take away that piece a little bit. So it's really going to be about prioritizing what their job description is and what their job duties are, and focusing on the main priorities for legal compliance and all those before they can dive into the other deeper stuff.
Thanks, Frank.
And Leslie, thanks for that question. I think this is again a good opportunity to just share out. That's why all of these decisions are agonizing, because we are a good district, a very good district in lots of areas. Number 2 in the state, as we keep saying, in lots of different areas, and that is awesome. And it is these prior opportunities that we've had that I think are very big deals to help us be where we are today. And so as you start to thin any sort of service, there is a trickle down to that, and we just need to know that. It will require many of our current roles and responsibilities to change a little bit, because just as Frank shared, you can't have 4 online or 2 online psychologist services if they're working 30-40 hours a week, and it's not seamless to just all of a sudden ask your boots on the ground psychologist to now absorb that task. So as Frank shared, we're going to have to retool how we deliver all of those services. But I think there is an opportunity here where we can still meet the expectations, and we'll do our utmost best. But our psychologists, for instance, might not be leading our MTSS teams like they have in the past. That responsibility might have to fall to some other people. So we will obviously do our very best, but we're super proud of all the work that everybody is doing, and there's a testing going on right now, and our tests are looking really good. They're not all done and not end, but we're doing, the staff are incredible in our schools, and they're doing great things. And so we're very, very cognizant of any of these cuts to the budget we're 85% people, so everything you do is related to an incredible human being that's providing a great service to our students. So with that said, I'm at the phase 3.
Yep, district certified administrative itinerant classified.
I shared with that. That $250,000, again, that will come from reductions in FTE. That will come from any additional resources we are committed. That represents about 6% as well of our personnel folks at our district office even. And so that will happen. That will happen in various different ways. I'm keenly aware of several individuals who, again, it's just how school is in Coeur d'Alene right now. They wonder if they have a job every couple of years because of the levy. They obviously wonder if they have a job right now because of our budget constraints. So we fully anticipate that there will be some people we didn't even think of that will be resigning and moving on, and we will do everything we can to absorb those positions in one way or the other, to share those responsibilities out to others and make those reductions. That just know that. So that's there. So yeah, so all of phase 3 has been reviewed. All of phase 2. And phase 3, you can see that we have one item checked in phase 3. So we are not at this time making recommendations to reduce our library managers, our 2 library managers. Our elementary school libraries will be, our elementary schools will be more full, have larger enrollments with potential reduction of a school. So that's all part of that shuffle there. So right now, again, if it's the board's will, we are recommending not to reduce our library managers or reduce our those 2 counselors that we had previously identified. And then on the coaching, the instructional coaching scenario, there's an update there as well. We had initially presented that we would reduce our current 11.5 coaches. Now that includes instructional coaches, technology coaches, and special ed coaches. And we would reduce those 11.5 to 9. To 2. So it was a reduction of 9. We are now recommending that we reduce that to 8.5. So we would be reduced by 8.5. Does that make sense? I'm not even making sense to myself. We would reduce our instructional coaches by 8.5. So we will go from 11.5 to 3.
Are those
And the
technology and special ed, or what?
It is
would remain?
okay. So one of the 2 that we initially were going to cut, instead of cutting both special ed coaches, we would cut only one. So we keep one. It is it's a very important position where we would have. I have visited with Frank last week. There's obviously special ed is a very difficult position in the district always anyway. And we have turnover in that, and we have lots of opportunities to help our most vulnerable students. And so having at least one coach, I think is very important. We had initially planned to reduce both because, again, we were trying to keep everything we could as far away from the students as we could, and coaches became a high priority reduction at the previous meetings. But it's become evident that we need to keep at least one of those special ed coaches, and then we would keep one elementary instructional coach and one secondary instructional coach, and that is it. That would be our essentially our 3 coaches at this time. Again, as I have was kind of alluding to, and more information will come in the next month or so as soon as the ISAT testing window is all wrapped up. Our goal, our strategic plan goal of increasing our 5%, growth in our areas, I'm feeling really confident about doing that. But that has come because of the great work our classroom teachers and administrators are doing, and our coaches have played a big responsibility in helping that. So this is a concern of mine for keeping that focus on our academic growth like we have committed to do by the reduction of those coaches. So I would hope that as things turn around and maybe we get some growth, maybe we get some additional funding coming in from the state, that we will go back and consider getting those coaches back in. That they were also a recommended component within our instruction or in our curriculum audit that we received in 2019. And that was also another reason why we really tried to do everything we could. We've used federal funds to try to fund most of those current coaching positions anyway, but now because of our budget constraints, we're shifting personnel so we can save those dollars, and the coach reductions would be a recommendation at this time. So that would be a reduction of 8.5 coaches. You would remain with 3. As I said, one special ed focused coach, and then one elementary, one secondary, or whatever makes sense there with those instructional coaches.
Can I ask a question on the coaching here?
You bet.
Are you utilizing those coaches, say at the elementary level, specifically for our new teachers? What's their primary?
It's all of the above. Katie, would you mind just coming up and just sharing some of the great work that our coaches do?
I have no doubt that they do great work. I just want to know primarily how they're utilized.
And
The district I came from, we had no coaches, and then we had one district coach, and teachers filled that void. Grade level
I'll let Katie address that. Our
so-
learning essentials are a big component of
Yes.
that. Our assessments are a big component of that. So
So,
Take it away,
Trustee Bierke, the coaches serve within the buildings that they work in about 60% of the time. So most coaches have 2 buildings that they're assigned to. So for example, they might be working at Fernan and at Atlas, for example. And so they work in both those buildings about 30% of the time in one building, 30% of the time in the other building, and they coach all teachers in those buildings, including new teachers and veteran teachers alike who are wanting to level up their game, so to speak. They help with curriculum implementation. They help with knowing what our essential standards are, identifying common formative assessments, all of the PLC work that we've been going toward. And then the other 30% of their time, another third of their time, they spend working on district initiatives. So things like running math academies or science academies or social studies academies, where they can really help align the curriculum district-wide so that we can ensure that we have guaranteed and viable curriculum in every single building. And they work really hard to make sure that we have shared out things like ISATs and interim ISATs and ways to help improve literacy around testing and assessment. So they serve a variety of roles. They're really kind of a utility knife, if you will, in that they can do many different things really, really well.
And so as a reminder, without our coaches, that burden and responsibility will fall back to primarily our administrative team and our teacher teams. So there is a ramification of making those reductions, but at this juncture, we feel like that's the best approach. The phase 4 and 5s that are on the spreadsheet are not marked at this juncture. If this is where the agonizing conversations, come in. If you opt to keep Bora open, which is a great school, you will need to initiate, phases 4 and 5 reductions to hit your mark. And as we have all wrestled over trying to make a decision between 2 choices that we don't love, my recommendation has had to focus on our students, and I know it's very it's a tough decision to make, but I feel like our students moving into another school and participating in good solid programs is a better benefit to our students across our schools than perhaps reducing even further staff and programs and opportunities for those students if they remain in their existing schools. And it is not a landslide sweep one side or the other. It just barely moves the needle, in my opinion, to recommend that the Bora school get repurposed at this juncture so that we can keep those other programs that you can see identified in phase 4. Our advanced learning program is a very supported, great program that benefits every student in the elementary schools. You might not think it does because it's focused on advanced learners, but as you can imagine, if you pull out those advanced learners for a little bit and have them work with an excellent teacher, that gives your excellent teacher in the classroom a better opportunity to work with students who might need a little more assistance. So it truly does benefit all students. And so not removing that program is clearly a high priority. we did hear conversations that, there are some districts in the state who, at the elementary level especially, they do not provide certified specialists in some of their specialized programs, like maybe their art teachers are not certified art teachers at the elementary level. We, as we listed here, we could potentially, reclassify all of our certified elementary specialists and try to hire classified individuals to do that task. We just don't feel that that's the best scenario for our kids. It takes a very talented specialist, whether you're in art or music or PE, to work with a variety of age groups of students from kindergarten through 5th grade. And, they go to a lot of school and a lot of training to be that professional. And so to strip that and say we're going to go a classified route, I'm sure there's some good classified employees out there that could do a good job, but I think there's, for anybody that's ever been in a classroom and understand the dynamics of teaching, it's not so easy to do, and we're all concerned that having a classified approach to replacing certified people is, again, it's a bottom of the list choice, so it's a low phase. But those are certainly conversations that we can have, when we get to the discussion of whether to repurpose Bora for the time being or not. Outside of that conversation, the only item that we have check marked to show you as a count on a revenue source is the $200,000 that we fully anticipate from the North Idaho College dual enrollment partnership. And we feel that is maybe not as comfortable for Shannon to put in the budget as most accountants would like, but we feel like it's a safe enough risk that we've gone ahead and added it into our plan. So as I said, to kind of reiterate with that, if Shannon or Jake could scroll back up to the top, with all of those items either turned on or turned off that I just went over, you can see that it brings our overall deficit down to about still having a $5,000 deficit. But we feel that if you're willing to recognize that you may need to use about half or so of that $3 million one-time money that we really do need to grow our reserve account with, if you're willing to utilize some of that, this budget proposal will keep some cuts out of phases 4 and 5 and position us where I feel like we can at least be on a path to continue our strategic plan of focusing on academics and achievements for our students, and we can be in a pretty good, we can be where we need to be for this year. There's no question next year poses another challenge. There's a lot of work to always do with our legislature and trying to keep funding for schools where it needs to be, and Idaho's we're just not there yet, as everybody knows. So we've got a lot of work to do along that path as well, but I'm hopeful that student enrollment will start to grow. We're working on a lot of avenues to try to have that happen, but I can't bank on that today for your budget. So based on that's the update of our current recommendations, and I'll pause there obviously for more questions, and then the last action item that you have for tonight would be to possibly approve this document, if you will, as presented. And we will take a PDF screenshot of that document as it is checkmarked with the things either on or off, and we will archive that within this board agenda as well, so that we have a history of what it is that we discussed and what you specifically supported. So let me pause there for any additional questions as we keep discussing.
Thank you, Dr. Hawker. And trustees, any additional questions at this point?
So several of the emails we got regarding school psychologists talked about school psychologist assistants, the other schools employ. What is that?
Did they use a specific term like psychometrist?
No, I think I got the impression they were not a certified
Yeah. So
psychologist.
what we have sometimes is we have interns, or
Okay.
we have students who are going through their master's program at the colleges, and they can be practicum students. And basically, part of their program is to learn how to do specific assessments or anything. But they're not employees. If they're an intern, we can hire them as a full school psychologist. But they have supervision, which is it's a lot of work for an in-person for one of our current sects. It's a lot of work to supervise an intern.
Yeah.
So we can do that. What we have done before in the past is have some of these students do specific testing, and we may pay them for it, and that's sort of more of a psychometrist role.
Okay. So, but we currently are not utilizing any of that. We've gone
No.
for the virtual
Yes.
contract
Yes.
route to fill. Okay.
Yeah, because they cannot run IEP meetings. They can't.
Okay.
The reports that have to be written by certified school psychologists.
Thank you.
Any additional questions before we maybe move to a couple specific?
I'm trying to wait to see if you guys are doing anything.
Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
Okay, so, I guess all the decisions that we make, enrollment is the driver of majority of everything that we're doing here. So, I just feel like I need to say it out loud. How many kids take advantage of ALP? Is there any idea? I mean, without that program, we're potentially shooting ourselves in the foot and driving parents out. I know that's one of the first things that I get asked. So that's more of a comment. I know it's not checked here, but I understand that not checking that box, it's a big dollar number, but I don't think it's crazy to say that the alternative might cost us triple it. It's more of a preventative medicine for deeper cuts down the road by preserving that program. So I just wanted to kind of say that out loud, and I'd love to save $375,000 by checking any box here, but that one just seems like we'd be going the direction that would make this gap a lot wider. The other piece is that, looking at this deficit, special ed has created, we've got a lot of kids that we need to serve, and those needs are deep and they're expensive, and we all agree that they're necessary. I have a concern with whether it's online or virtual or whatnot. I have a concern with eliminating anything that, just in your real life, if you've been bitten once on a budget, then to have other impact, directly impacting gaps there or reductions, it doesn't seem very wise to me. So those are the hangups that I have in all of this. I love the fact that I'm totally in support of moving that $1.5 million and monitoring it and praying that we get another 100 kids in the school district. But anything that has to do with, mental health, safety, and special ed, because I feel like our first round of cuts here and everything that we're looking to do is all geared towards student achievement, and I think that's number one. I just would love that all of our focus for these savings to really be looked at a lens of safety, mental health, special ed. So while I'm excited that there's fewer cuts, it still feels like there's a little ways to go before I'm super comfortable with it.
I agree with that as well. It does make me kind of nervous seeing even using our one-time money, that still doesn't really put us ahead. And I am concerned that there's a lot of turmoil and greater mistrust. We've heard from tons in the community, tons of staff. That makes me nervous that people may leave more than we want them to leave. We don't want anyone to leave, but more than we need them, and that parents may also go that route. And I feel like this doesn't necessarily provide us with more security. And I know everybody probably will agree with this. We don't want to revisit this next year if we can help it. We don't want to have to come back and do this again because maybe our enrollment isn't growing as much as we'd like, or maybe it dips more than we anticipated. So I do have concerns about that as well. The other thing I'm going to ask, and please don't read into this, it's just for information. Let me think how I'm going to ask this. Does every one of our current schools have APs?
Have AOP?
AP, assistant principals. So all of our elementary schools currently have an AP. And I think APs are vital, they're important, but I think for some of our smaller schools, that might be something we want to consider.
Trustee Bjerke, the two schools that have a 0.5 AP are Sorensen and Venture.
Everyone else has a full-time?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so Sorensen has AP part-time.
0.5,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And as a reminder, if the board's decision is to repurpose Bora, then all of the elementary schools will be, larger. So that helps to, and as I would just say too, the number one positive influence on student achievement is a teacher. The number two is an administrator. So that is why our administrators are on the list, but they are down at phase 5. And with the reduction of our coaches that we have recommended to cut, the administration will have to pick up the vast majority of that additional responsibility as well. And there's not an building administrator that I see in the room, but they all are incredible people, and they work their tail off. And as you can imagine, we'll be asking even more of them as well with should we approve this proposal and reduce the coaches as we are recommending. So just keep that in mind, please.
Dr. Nelson, you're ready.
Sorry about that. Trustee McAndrew, Chair Smith, and members of the board. Currently, our elementary advanced learning program, and I'm assuming that's what you're referring to, serves students so identified in either English language arts and or mathematics. Currently served in either English language arts or mathematics is 575 total students. Served in both ELA and mathematics is 320 students, so a total of 895 students have access to either English language arts and or mathematics at each of our current 11 elementary schools.
Thank you. Good data. Thank you.
Any additional general questions for right now that either need to happen now or later on?
I think I just missed the number earlier when you were talking about some of the DO positions that'll be reduced. Can you speak to that again, please?
Yes, you can see on the line, let me make sure. Yes, line 54, there will be the equivalent of 3.7 FTE reductions with an estimation of $250,000.
And you said that's 6% of the district office?
Correct.
How many positions does that end up adding up to, I guess?
It would be 3.7 FTEs, and so, it could be 6 people that work half-time, it could be 3 that work full-time, any combination thereof. All the FTEs that we've listed down are FTE equivalents, and they're based upon a full 2,080 full-time schedule. And the vast majority of our employees do not work a full schedule. So when you see a reduction of maybe 60 FTE in the district, it really could be 75 or 100 individuals throughout the district that add up to that 60 full-time FTE equivalent.
I think it's important that we note also, I think there was in 58 folks that are considered administration or whatnot. It looks like we get grants that pay for 29% of those wages. It's federal money. That's a big chunk, and you don't want to eliminate positions that aren't costing you anything by any means. I do think that there's an appetite or a desire out there. I see that 6% is just to see that it's, probably more in line with what it's almost like its own cost center. So 6% of what that overall, those expenditures, those wages, I think that's kind of where where I'm kind of reading into, if that could be a little bit deeper there.
Let me share with you that it is, because as you can see, all 8.5 reductions of instructional coaches, that's part of your 58 staffers that are listed at the district office. So the reality is you're going to be reducing, 10 out of your 58 employees at the district office, which is a far larger percentage than 6% across the board anywhere else. So if that's if the perception again remains that the administration is top heavy, we continue to fail that by sharing out that is absolutely not the case. And we will just continue to have to make sure everybody is aware of what it takes to run payroll and HR and a system with 1,500 employees. As you pointed out, Trustee McAndrew, a good chunk of the employees that are housed at the district office are funded out of grants, or they're funded out of enterprise programs that do not apply to the general budget, if you will. They are revenue neutral programs where we bring in money for School Plus and we expend it out for staff. But those staff are, if you will, housed, I guess, out of the district office.
Right.
So there is a bigger picture than that. We are going $250,000 in FTE over and above even the reduction of the 8 instructional coaches.
Right. So you said that number was like 11.7 when you add them up. So it's really almost 12 out of 41 positions. So depending upon how you look at it, that's 30% of the. It's just tough. I mean, it just really. 20%.
Trustee Anderton, did you have?
I just think, like Jimmy, it's really important that we address that lack of trust that the community has and that our staff seems to have in how transparent we are being about that. And so it is really important that we continue to restate that. A lean DO is great, but when we're making all these other cuts, I'm glad to hear that we're doing a bit more. But those in leadership, it's really important to be the ones that set the example and lead by example. And when we are asking all these other cuts of the rest of our families and staff and students to absorb, I think there's still some positions that we could be considering in this. I know we had discussed I hate to do anything with mental health, but I know that one of those positions is actually funded by federal dollars, correct? So, and we have a mental health department of 4 at the district office, is that correct?
That's correct.
And there's no other district around us that has a mental health department like that.
That's correct.
Correct. And I know that's something that we've, especially Trustee Morris Rowe, fought for really hard before. But is it necessary for us to have 4 people in that department? Can we go with the one that is federally funded at this point in time and be able to cut some more costs at the top? Shannon, I know I sent you an email earlier concerning that. It was really late, so I'm not sure if you were able to.
Last night.
today.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't receive it.
That's okay.
Is that
It was
for
kinda last
FTE?
minute.
I know it's for people.
Yeah, it's
Is it for FTE?
1 FTE in Title I, and the 3 are general fund.
They're FTE.
Yeah.
3 FTE.
So just speaking as these aren't
Yeah.
in our schools every single day, boots on the ground, working with our kids, is that another place that we can start looking?
Well, and Trustee Anderton, I'll just share. There's 1,500 employees in the district, and we can evaluate, the value of each and every one of those. I think our community has previously been very have made significant statements of the need for that mental health services. A team of 4 is far less than what we need in our district as well. I understand we're not at a time of plenty in our district, but we are also very well aware that the levy discussions really focused on this benefit, if you will, of providing mental health services, which there's just not enough of in our community. You have heard from members within our community who have relied upon those services and how valuable those services are. So again, we're just trying to present to you recommendations to minimize as least as possible the impact of any of these reductions. Our district traditionally has been a very good district with very good resources for our students. And so as we continue with any program moving forward, until that funding changes, until student enrollment maybe changes, we are where we are today. As I shared with you at our last meeting, this is the culmination of a perfect storm. This is nothing that current administration laid out. This is 100% result of the state of Idaho reducing funding to school districts when the federal government started to provide funding to school districts because of COVID and creating some additional money there. And this school district has been leaning on those dollars for 4 years. Those dollars are now over and can't be used come September. You factor that significant change of $20+ million that has gone to help backfill holes within our district budget for the last 5 years. You factor in additionally the loss of 1,000+ students over that time period, and then you factor in the change in funding that the state has reverted back to this year, from moving away from a funding model based upon enrollment and the numbers of kids that sign up to go to your class, which drives our staffing needs and everything. And then you change that to an attendance-based model where you are funded based upon kids actually showing up to come to class. And again, we're above state average, but we hover around that 92% attendance. So we're losing 8% of our state funding right off the top because of that change. So you factor in all of those areas, all of those reasons, that's why we are at our $6 million today. So yes, we will need to prioritize all programs and offerings as we move forward until we can hopefully turn the corner and our strategic plan sets a goal that we will be a district of choice in the Northwest, and that people will see the value of Coeur d'Alene School District. And as we have shared with you, there is a list as long as my left arm of the things that we do in our schools every day that are not provided in other school opportunities in our area. But all of those items come with some sort of an expense, a staff member, a program, something that's associated with them. And our mental health services are part of that extensive list.
And I would argue that the psychologist positions that we're looking at, even though they're telehealth at this point in time, are just as important, if not more important, because they are working with our kids all day long, every day, our families. Those nurses that we need to still fill vacancies for, one that hopefully will get paid for by Kootenai Health, but
Yeah, I can't argue that because
they're more
they're all
hands-on
important.
with our kids right now, and right now, adults need to be adults and work on finding mental health support outside of relying on our school district to provide that. I feel like.
So maybe we hold on to that when we come back to the individual, maybe number 3, and we at that point go through that at that point. That sound all right?
Sure.
Okay. Are we okay to keep going with our next action items then? Anyone need a break?
You know what? I do.
Do you need a break?
I do for a second. Let me do that.
Okay.
Is that okay?
All right, we're going to take a quick break, 5-minute break.
Yeah.
Let you, and then we'll jump into action here. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. First item of potential action for tonight is the discussion regarding the repurposing of Bora Elementary School. And we've had the privilege of a lot of public comment on this. We've been able to visit with Bora and your staff. Thank you all for being here. And I know that the rest of your staff is listening right now, and your kids and your students. And so we want to recognize that right from the beginning of this discussion, that there is hearts behind all the numbers and kids and passionate staff behind every moment of this discussion. So we want to recognize that right away. And thank you. Trustees, do we have questions to start with, or there is a potential motion there, so we can make a motion if we need to and then move into discussion, or we do it both ways here. So whatever the sense is.
No, I guess I don't know if there's a way. I think we're just all talking out loud right now, right? But we haven't thrown this challenge out to our community, but I mean, if for some reason we could get 100 more kids or 50 more families to enroll in the school district in the next 30 days or whatnot, I mean, irregardless of what decisions we make tonight, I mean, it kind of seems like an act of desperation, but are those potential needle movers for decisions like this? I mean, how fast can the Titanic move on a dime if we were able to, pull a rabbit out of our hat with regards to enrollment numbers? I guess that's the only thing that's been on my mind.
There's no question that new student enrollment drives a significant function of the budget. Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe approximately 30 students generates one support unit. And one support unit generates about how much in funding?
About 140,000. That's, with current year. And Jimmy, just an answer, we wouldn't be able to see kind of the impact of that funding until November, when we actually see what our average daily attendance for that midterm area was. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, we'd have enough math, I suppose, to determine whether or not we would want to deficit fund until then over something this seismic.
Yeah, you would. And then I just wanted to throw a comment out. You're not approving the budget tonight. You're approving recommendations. So a lot's going to shake out within also the next couple of weeks. So at that point, in June, you will be approving the budget. So just keep that in mind too. If things do look a little better, then we can revisit. And then if things look a little worse, especially with inflation, then we'll see how much we can go into those reserves.
Thank you all for coming tonight. We got to visit with most of you, I think, the other day, and this is really, really heavy on our hearts, as I know it is even more so for all of you. However this shakes out tonight, I want you to know that, I'll just speak for me right now, that I'm so impressed with everything you do, and you have been a wonderful light in your students' lives. And whether they get to stay or whether they go, they are going to take what you've given them and go on and do wonderful things. I have no doubt that those students at Bora are going to go on to do great things. And that's because of the time you've given them, and of course their parents too. But so please know that you are valued, and this is a decision we never want to make. But this is where we are now. So I just wanted to say that.
One question that I have, Dr. Hawker, is that if we move ahead with this, can you speak to services following students and the impact? One thing that's been brought up number of times and just in conversations as well, is especially as I think of like Brian and some of each of our schools, how are our services that each of these fragile students that they need, how is that going to follow the students so that we surround our kids in maybe their new school settings?
Well, thank you, President Smith. We've also received those great questions from the staff themselves at Bora, and we have there's a transition plan that's been outlined, and Patty, do you want to come up and I'll let the assistant superintendent over elementary kind of outline a few of those items, but there's no question that should the board decide to move forward in that direction, it's one of the reasons why the decision needs to come sooner than later, because there's a lot to do if indeed this is going to happen. A lot with staff, a lot with students, and the information that they would like to have, obviously before transitioning to a brief summer break before school starts. But the teams have been very thoughtful and mindful of identifying next steps along the way, and I'd like to have Patty share that out with everybody.
Good evening, Chair Smith and trustees. Thank you for everything that you've mentioned tonight, and the staff has been on our hearts throughout this whole process as well. I appreciate them being here and all of the questions they've given us. The kids and the parents are on our hearts as well, so we've come together to start anticipating what you may choose to do tonight. And one of the things we've done is bring the receiving principals together with Mr. Peak, Principal Peak, and just really use their creativity and their ideas on how they could reach out right away. Following your decision tonight, if you approve this proposal to repurpose Bora, we will send a letter out to the Bora families so that they know that this is the decision that's been made, and asking them to anticipate a reach out from their receiving schools. And so there will be a special night at each of the schools where the students will now be a part of, to welcome them to those schools in May, and then fun things and just helping the kids start to begin to gain a sense of belonging in their new school family. Likewise for staff, we're supporting them along the way as well. Our HR department is also anticipating all the different openings that will be with these numbers going into the schools, and so we feel like we're going to have a very supportive plan going forward for each stakeholder. Parents that will be participating now in a new school community, should you accept this proposal, the new leaders of the schools will be available to them, of course, to answer any questions. June would be a great time as well for them when the kids have gone, for parents to come in. They could have a one-on-one with the principal and get to know them. I know that special services for kids who have exceptional needs, we will have those teachers who are receiving those kids into their special education programs. They'll reach out to parents, and I know Mr. Mayor can speak to that as well. We've been looking at those numbers with the proposed zones that we have to get an idea of how we would disperse kids into new attendance zones, and I know you'll see that in your docs there tonight to look at as well. One thing, just listening to your wrestling with this, just like we have, it's been very hard for me. It's not what I came here to do, of course. We like to build up programs and teachers and schools without question, and Bora is a special one in so many ways. What started helping me understand a little bit more about school finance and our budget and just where we're at in Coeur d'Alene was that over 5 years, a decline in almost 1,000 students. One thing that might also be telling is that last Thursday, on that day last year, we had 283 more students than we do now this year. So the decline is real, and Bora has 293 students right now. It's not the only school that's small. We have other schools that have small enrollment, and so this will help build each of our schools with a healthier enrollment, and as Dr. Hawker mentioned, still be able to provide all the services that we're providing to our elementary kids at all remaining 10 schools.
Thank you.
I know how I would feel about this as a parent, and I can imagine how I would feel about it as a staff member. But I moved to repurpose Bora Elementary School beginning with the 24-25 school year and direct district administration to assign current Bora students to surrounding schools and bring boundary changes to the May 13th, 2024 regular board meeting.
Is there a second?
Can I just ask her a question? Is there, I mean, everything you laid out was great. Is there, because teachers, is there any potential that we can have it so teachers are following their kids, or is that just out of, am I just underthinking that way too much?
Well, these are amazing people, and I'll get choked up too if I look at them again, but I know that they were asked by our Eric Davis, Director of Human Resources, to give their priorities where they would like to go. In conversation with them, they too have talked about their kids, you know, where will our kids be and how will we be with our kids? And so looking at where they would like to go serve, obviously, we're going to have more kids at 5 of our schools, predominantly 3 of our schools. So we will need staff there as we create new sections at mostly the 3 schools that the Bora kiddos are going to.
All right. Go ahead.
I have a concern as far as that goes as well. There's a large number of our Cat 1 and Cat 2 teachers at Bora right now. Those are teachers that are potentially looking at being cut at this point in time. So how are those teachers going to be able to follow their kids if that's the case?
All across our district, our Category 1 teachers are wondering that, and that just further explanation. I know Mr. Davis, if his voice is with him, he can explain that probably more thoroughly than I can, but those contracts, when they're Category 1, are only offered for 1 year to all of our teachers, K-12 across the district, and so doesn't make it any easier for a whole community, you know, of people that love working together. That's another thing that I've heard from the staff. Category 2, as well, that's not a continuing contract, so I can tell him that he's here wanting to try to speak to it, so I'll let him do that.
So all Cat 1 teachers, no matter what school they're at, are a 1-year contract. And that's a hard reality for the education system in Idaho. And so they're all on a 1-year deal. Second-year contracts are all on a Cat 2. They also don't have any property rights. One of the things I'm struggling with personally is the fact that I can't treat Cat 1s or Cat 2s at any particular building better or worse than I can treat Cat 1s or Cat 2s at any other building. Where I can tell you where we're at is that so far as we're working through the potential and the contingency of this possibly happening, it is becoming more and more apparent that we will be able to place a significant number of those people in jeopardy in Cat 1 and Cat 2. And as time goes on, I imagine we'll be able to do even more. Right now, I think, without making any promises, is that Cat 2s are in a pretty good spot. Cat 1s are going to have to apply for open positions in all likelihood, like they would every year at this moment in time. But I think we've got ourselves in a pretty good place as we work through some of these placements. hopefully that answers your question. The other thing that we have to be cognizant of as we talk about teachers moving with their students, our students don't move in nice little groups where there's a whole class at one of the buildings, nor may that be the perfectly healthy thing to do, right? To have a school within a school, a Bora class within a Fernand school may not be the healthiest thing to do. But we generally don't have the pockets of kids where we would have 23 kindergartners, let's say, all go to the same school. It's probably going to be something less than that. But we are working on getting the teachers into those buildings that will be familiar with the vast majority of the kids, if that's their desire. Because like we said, we've had them fill out some forms giving us some choices that they would like to have. And I'm doing the best that I possibly can to honor some of those choices.
I think we just, for the kiddos that have the most needs, having a familiar face just,
And we will do,
hopefully goes.
yeah, we will do our best with that. And that really is in a sped situation most of the times. But we also understand that, and we'll do our best.
There is a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Because of our dire financial circumstance and a very heavy heart, I'm going to second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion or questions or?
We're so sorry.
So all in favor of,
Can I
go ahead, yeah.
I'd like to say one thing. I mean, all of this is our staff, our community, kids are taking a huge hit in their confidence in leadership really hurting as much as they are right now. Perception and optics is huge in the support of our schools going forward. Always has been. In light of the continued decrease in enrollment, we've lost 42 kids in the last 2 months already. I'd love to see us make a good faith effort towards our community, towards our staff, towards our kids. And if we are going to do this and close Bora to repurpose the building, I really would like to see our DO move from the district office and utilize that building. I don't see the need for fancy remodels and all of those things. Make it work. It's going to hurt. It's hurting a lot of people right now. And then we sell that district office to add to that reserve fund that we have, that we need to build up some more to give us a little more security going forward. When we were at the Ed Law conference that we just went to last week, in one of the groups we talked about relationships and those relationships between the community and leadership and staff. And one of the biggest things that I gleaned from that discussion was that a dysfunctional relationship between the community and our leadership and our schools will equal lower student achievement. And if we don't make some significant steps towards repairing that relationship, we're just going to continue to lose kids. We're going to see that relationship decline, and we're going to see drops in student achievement. We're looking at needing a levy in November. If we lose more support, this isn't going to be the only cut that we make that hurts like this. So I just wanted to get that out there as something we discuss before we get to that next step.
And so thank you. And there was a lot in that. So maybe we come back to that again. Okay, let's work on this section, and then I think there's pieces there, Trustee Anderton, we can come back to and readdress. So, all in favor of the motion that's before us? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Trustee Southwick. Yeah. Dr. Hawker, is there anything additional as far as transitions and those types of things that you want to bring to light right now?
We will touch base in board information, additional information in regards to the drafted alignments for the attendance zones. So we'll save that for the additional board information, and then we will move forward with those plans that have been drafted and outlined, so that we can start to help our staff and help our students know where they will be next year. That is a big task.
Please pass on. We have a number of letters here from your kids, from Jax and Emerson and all of their friends that have signed letters of support. And so we know that you'll tell them that those letters made a difference, because we do care about them. We know you'll nurture them and do that work. Thank you. All right. We're going to go on to the next. All right, trustees, can we move on? I know that feels like we're rolling forward, but we're going to step on to the next piece. And I guess as we do that, I would just say that I guess personally, just in my own work, sometimes when we close things and we make things different, whatever we need to do as a district, as a community, to in the future here stop, pause, and recognize what has been done. Sometimes in that process of transition, those moments of doing that are just very important. And so whatever that looks like for the community of Bora over the next 8 weeks between now and into the end of the year would be just very important. And I know that our admin will be able to surround that community to make those steps and to stop, pause, and recognize what the work that has been done, the good work that has been done. We're going to move on then into the next agenda item for this evening, which is the fiscal year 25 school calendar. And Dr. Hawker, would you like to present anything on that?
Yes. You've received a fair amount of information for the last several months in regard to calendar options. We currently operate on a 5-day calendar, and we surveyed our community, surveyed our staff in regards to a few options of a 4-day calendar and what we called the 160-day calendar. That information's all been presented with you as well. There are pros and cons with all of those options. Making no change on a calendar will result in no additional savings from a budget perspective to the district. But with that said, you are aware of the anticipated budget savings of a 4-day, the anticipated budget of a 160-day calendar. There are an enormous amount of impacts with either calendar. You've heard from your community and heard from us as well to each of those. You've continued to receive updates as they continue to roll. We shared with you just this weekend of another school district, Idaho Falls School District, who is also transitioning to a different type of calendar for next year. And I think I think the the reality is Idaho funding makes it very difficult to have a robust calendar with all the things we want to do 5 days a week. And so we proposed a few options of 4-day. I think the vast majority, I think would be safe to say, the vast majority of our teaching staff within the district would prefer to consider the 4-day calendar. I think the life of the 160-day calendar came out because we absolutely want to make the best decisions that we can make for our students in these difficult times. And as I shared with you, the number one positive impact to student achievement is our teachers. Number two is our administrators, and it is not far down the list for your support personnel that provide those key programs and opportunities for kids. And by contemplating a 4-day calendar, it had significant ramifications to many of our support staff, and our hourly employees provide an incredible service. So the 160-day calendar came to life as a middle ground approach that created some potential, opportunities again for middle ground. In the 160-day calendar, every other Friday, every Friday students went to school through lunchtime. So we're at least addressing that concern with all of our kiddos. And your hourly classified employees, for the most part, most of them retained their current benefit status and the other benefits that they receive as hourly employees. Teachers had some additional time for collaboration in that calendar, and still I'm trying to remember all the details of all the various calendars, but that's really the primary modifications, if you will, to that 160-day calendar. The 4-day calendar, I think, kind of speaks for itself. You've heard from multiple students, especially our Lake City High School students, of the concern of a 4-day calendar with a block schedule, and those are 100% legit concerns. So again, the 4-day, although supported by our staff, is not without some concerns for some other operations. Remaining in the 5-day calendar is the presentation that I shared with you earlier. We have not selected an option for either one of those, so there's no in the budget as it sits right now, where you basically are sitting at a zero reserve and a zero deficit, plus or minus $5,000 on that worksheet. You could choose to stay in a 5-day calendar, and we
Dr.
would.
Hawker, I have a question.
Yeah.
So one of our boxes that is checked is professional development subcosts.
Yes.
If we stayed in a 5-day calendar, would we still see those savings?
That's correct.
How would we why not?
Restructuring. I know Eric can't talk very well with his voice, but it's about restructuring how we currently use our professional development schedule and times, and again, in the budget reduction, we are reducing a significant amount of our instructional coaches. So some of the professional development that we provided to our staff in-house throughout the school year would not take place. So it's a shuffle of all of that to create those additional savings.
So it would be, that represents a reduction in hours spent in professional development, not a asking of teachers to do it outside of existing hours.
Not yet. Correct. I'm trying to make sure I understand your question.
We wouldn't be asking teachers to attend professional development outside of their
No.
normal hours.
Correct. That is correct. We just wouldn't be pulling teachers out of their regular teaching assignments as often to do various different professional development opportunities that we have provided. We would significantly change that structure in and of itself. So there'd be less substitute costs throughout the school year for all employees.
Okay. Thank you.
So then, yeah. So the 5-day calendar, our current calendar, the biggest conversations that we've received from our community is, and from a good amount of our teachers, is the late start Monday schedule. So depending upon which calendar the board might opt to go to, we would plan to put that calendar together in detail. And have time to vet that out through your calendar committee, and then present you with that calendar at your next regular board meeting, which would be May 13th.
Trustees, we at our last workshop had some discussion around this and where we each were kind of sitting. Thoughts. We've had some good feedback too about what Fridays could look like if we maintain our current calendar. There's been some interesting things brought up that way too about what moving. No, I guess moving late start Monday to Friday, and maybe doing some different things there as well has come through as letters of interest. So I don't know if that's something.
Yeah, I think we would,
Speak to.
if you choose to stay with the 5-day calendar, we would approach that item with our calendar committee and see what their thoughts are. Generally, the calendar committee makes some recommendations, and then that is shared out amongst the staff throughout the district for additional input, and then brought back here to the board to share for final adoption. You have already approved the skeleton of next year's calendar as far as at least the start of the school and some of the major breaks throughout the school year. But outside of that, the community and staff are eager to learn of what that calendar specifically might look like next year.
Just a question, do we know if we lost any kids to Post Falls last year over the 4-day? Them moving? Do we know any of that data? Okay. I was kind of curious. For me, this just all amounts to student achievement, and I've not been able to determine, soundly whether or not the 4-day or the 5-day negatively impacts student achievement. And so for that, I have grave concerns about what it may do. I think we all, COVID taught us, at least me as a parent, that I want my kids to be in school as much as possible. And I have a lot of concerns over, the optics when it comes to asking taxpayers to support our levy this year. I think we have an uphill battle there. I think we always have an uphill battle. And I think there's a lot of folks out there that would find a lot of reservations in supporting a levy when their understanding is that kids are going to school less. And that's what I'm kind of hanging my hat on. I don't know how you all feel, but that's where my concerns come in. I think the best place for kids 5 days a week is in schools, in Coeur d'Alene School District 271. And it would be easier to get behind a 4-day week if I didn't think that's the best place for them to be. And frankly, I'm glad that they're with their teachers 5 days a week now. I don't know if I may make a motion.
Well, can I say a few things before
Sure.
we jump right to that? I've spent the last few weeks reading everything I can get my hands on for 4-day school weeks. I've talked to people from Post Falls as well as some of the local charter schools that are also on 4-day. I agree that I don't think either of these, or at least for me, either of these choices there's not 100% good or 100% bad. I think either could be good, but there's pros and cons definitely to both. But what I would like to share is at least what I've learned, and maybe that will be helpful information for people to know. Seems like I'll give you a little history. In 1999 is when we first started seeing in rural districts, mostly rural districts, 4-day-a-week schools. Since 1999, we've had a 600% increase in 4-day schools. We have 90-something districts in Idaho alone that are 4-day-a-week, and over 1,000 districts throughout 25 different states. So I see a trend going in this direction, and while this might not be the right fit for us this year, I do follow educational trends. I spent a lot of time reading this, and I do see that parents, students, families want more of a work-life balance. And so that I really do feel like probably within 5 years, we're going to see more and more schools go that direction. I know that Nampa just went that direction. Kellogg is talking about going that direction next year. So eventually, I think we're going to see that more and more. It concerns me that the more 4-day districts, if we stay 5, that some of our teachers will leave because they would rather have that. And we have gotten a ton of staff emails that seem to indicate that they have a strong desire for that. But these are the pros that I have found so far. Decrease absences, which is great. That's better for kids, right? We say we want our kids to come to school. We have seen in everything I've read, there is definitely decreased absences, which is also good for our bottom line on our budget because we won't be losing ADA. Increased teacher retention. I know several people that go to the charter school down the street, and they said they have a waiting line for teachers applying at their school, and they've been 4-day for years now. Up to about a 2% budget savings. I've read everywhere from 0.5% to 2%. So, but there is a savings. Work-life balance, I already mentioned that. There's an increased potential for students to work. This is obviously older students, getting more involved in some additional activities, perhaps have an intervention day and get some extra tutoring support that could be offered by a school. So those are the advantages that I found. The one thing I have not found cut and dry is, does it take away from our students' achievement? We don't know that. I don't think anybody's going to know that probably until we have more time. But anecdotally, I've talked to parents from Post Fall whose children are on 4-day, and like I said, some neighboring charter schools. One of them is very close to me. My nieces went to 4-day. My younger niece is still on 4-day, and according to their family, they have not seen any decrease in 3 years on the 4-day in the in their academic achievement levels. And then the families I spoke to in Post Falls also said the same thing. Now, granted, they've only been a year, but I have heard that. So I just really felt like it was important that you guys knew that there are a lot of advantages, and morale is another one. And morale directly affects our students. So while it may not be the choice for us this year, I do see that we're going to need to really be open to it, if not now, then later. But it seems like there's a lot of pros. And being a teacher, I know I can do an amazing job in 4 days with students. You may not be able to do all, some extra stuff that we do now, but I think if we were strategic, we could do amazing things. So while it sounds like I'm advocating for it, I just wanted to share the information that I was able to glean over the last several weeks. I think that's important for us to take in everything we can. So, and in terms of my high school friends that love their block schedule, I too am a block schedule advocate. I think there's a lot of greatness coming for the block schedule. I'm a big fan. I think there would be ways to probably work that. I know Mr. Derrick said that he already has a way, so I feel confident that if we did go that way, we could still honor that schedule that community loves so much. The downside, of course, is our classified staff would lose hours and benefits, and that's just a horrible option. And then the other side, because I did it at the cons, it would be the earlier start time for our high school friends. I know it's hard to get up early in the morning, so, but that's what I came up with. So I thought that would be helpful for everybody to hear those. And I'm sure I can make the pros list more extensive, but those were the main things. Thank you.
I'll just say that through the research that I was able to do, I found a lot of the same things that Leslie's speaking of now, as well as speaking with quite a few of the teachers at Lake City, saying that they could absolutely make their block schedule work. They'd have to modify it somehow, but that they could make it work if they were down to 4 days. Not saying that that's the right choice for us this year necessarily, but I think those are all points that we need to consider when we're looking forward, especially the morale part of things. But then I think we take that hit too with losing the cuts to the classified staff and the benefits. So I'm really torn on this one right now.
I feel like I have to make this decision based on student achievement, and I think we need our classified staff in our schools to really have student achievement. And so, teachers are the number one influence, but classified is right up there. So, so for that reason, I lean away from the 4-day school week. I'm interested for sure in this Idaho Falls schedule that they're starting with the intervention day. I really like that idea a lot. I'm not sure we can do it by next school year, though, correct?
You know,
it's a lot to get done in
it really is, and
month.
thank you for recognizing that. I think that is a very intriguing option. It's emulates the Bonneville School District calendar to some extent, and that was our 160-day build based on that recommended calendar with the items that they recommended we might tweak to make it even better. There's no question that I think Idaho Falls has a very intriguing perspective. It'd be great to watch them and see how things go for this first 6 months of next year, and then if it's the board's will, we certainly could entertain, bringing that conversation to our community and see what that perspective is from our staff and our community. The best thing that I like about that plan is that the elementary students primarily retain mostly a 5-day schedule, and the middle school and secondary students, it's much more of a 4-day schedule with an intervention opportunity on those Fridays. The Bonneville School District plan does have the elementary students on more of a permanent 4-day schedule. So those two communities are right next door. It's like a Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene school district. So it'll be very interesting to see how all of that kind of melds out. But our 160 calendar is our closest option to what they proposed, and they approved apparently at their board meeting here recently.
I lean towards the 5-day just because most of our staff and parents did not like the idea of the 160. So that's where I'm leaning, at least for next school year. I would be interested to see, can we add a little more of this kind of professional development PLC time to a 5-day schedule, through, I don't know. I mean, Allie talked about maybe one Friday a month, or, I'd be interested in that if we chose to stay on 5-day.
We will absolutely take those notes to the calendar committee and see what they can come up with. I think that's a very viable option to perhaps enhance the opportunities for our staff on those Fridays, and also not create a burden from a child care perspective for much of our elementary staff or much of our elementary parents on those Fridays too. So I do think it's something I have confidence that the calendar committee team and we can put that together and bring that to you for recommended approval at your May 13th meeting.
I guess I'd like to add too, if we're going to stay with the 5-day, realize that cuts us 0 money, and that could possibly potentially lead us to be right back where we are next year. So that's very concerning. And then adding PD time, if it's going to have a cost to it, I don't think that's something we should look at. I think our staff has enough on their minds now, like I mentioned earlier, just with all the turmoil, I guess. I don't have a better word for that right now.
Let me add.
But the uncertainty that
absolutely.
we have right now, I don't think we should be adding something else, especially if there's a cost involved.
Simply focused on our professional learning community work, and that is just collaboration with the staff. And we have greatly decreased the amount of pull-out professional development. Our entire focus is to try to create a plate that teachers feel is not overrunning all the time. And so our high reliable schools and PLC focus is the sole focus, and that will be delivered internally. So much less, that now that's not to say there's not times where certain departments and certain people may need to have some professional development from someone outside the district. I don't want to say that never happens, but in general, our intent would be to provide the vast majority of our opportunities in-house without having to pull teachers out of classrooms in the middle of the week and the month to attend those kinds of trainings. And that's where some of those additional costs come from, not having the substitute expenses that we traditionally have had.
Can I add one more thing? Sorry. So if we also stay with 5 days, then we're going to have to dip into that 3.1 because we can't afford to do it otherwise. So that has to be part of this conversation right now.
That's correct.
No, because what they have now is still in the hole, almost $5,000. So we haven't added that piece back in.
Right, what I'm
Still,
saying is that's why it was.
they didn't check it. Right, but what I'm saying is if we choose not to check either one of these schedules, 116, the majority of people don't want, so that's off the table. With the 4-day, saves us quite a lot of money. If we choose to stay with our current 5-day schedule, what I'm saying is, without checking that still puts us negative 4,800-ish. So we would have to take some of that pot, so we should probably talk about that.
But
yes,
I
I think you're both talking the same thing.
Yeah.
That yes,
Maybe we're
what's
just saying it
important
different.
to remember is that we have to have at least 1 to 2% of what I'll call contingency funding allowed within a budget. Without that, you have to bank on using reserves. So this proposal that we have clicked through and turned on and off items, it creates basically a zero budget. There is no contingency funding extra contingency. In fact, to Leslie's point, we're still $5,000 in the hole, really. But on the scale of $1 million, I'm just going to round and call that zero, or $100 million, excuse me. But the fact would remain that you will need 1.5% or so of a contingency fund built in, and so it is going to be highly likely that you'll use half or so of that $3 million that we will get in one-time makeup funding. You will use half of that or so throughout next year to just keep the budget whole, because of those contingencies that we do our very best to predict, and we're usually really good. But again, we can't guarantee that our enrollment projections are spot on. They could be low, they could be high. And so that changes the overall budget perspective, as does a few other things like I mentioned. This year specifically, we had increased expenses with our special needs students, and therefore you've got to have those funds to cover that.
I'm sorry, I'm talking so much. I would also like to recommend too, if we choose to not change our school calendar, that we spend the next year getting input and really working on changing it, because if we don't get a big increase, we're going to be doing this again. So that we need to start looking at Plan B and give us time to do that. Can we get would you be willing to do that?
Well, of course, we'll be
I
willing,
mean,
and perhaps.
I guess I need the reassurance that we would be looking
We'll
at
do
that.
everything and that you always ask. So we can put that together and present that. If it's the will of the board, we would love to. We will make sure we do that. There's time and a process to do that, and as you can see, even today, we're a little behind the gun in making a calendar change that dramatic to have it implemented as smooth as we might wish it be implemented for next school year. So that may be a conversation that the board may need to entertain midwinter, and perhaps kind of set a goal to either decide or not by February-ish. I think that helps our high school kids, especially with course offerings and it really helps our community, because this is a team approach. We rely on our community and our resources to partner with our district. If we're going to change a calendar of some sort and do something a little different, we want those community partners to join with us and create that plan to what can we do for students for maybe a day where they aren't having class, if that's what happens, or how are we going to provide meals for students that need those meals on those days where maybe there's not school, all of those things. So I would, if it's the will of the board, we can certainly evaluate the first several months of Idaho Falls' plan, and we can continue to look at our options and plans, and we can present some options for you by January, so that you can continue to have those conversations, and hopefully by no later than spring break or so, March, you vote, because we need a little more time. April's a little late here for us too, although I think we could make the change. We're prepared enough. More time's always better as you consider these kinds of drastic changes.
So maybe in the fall, we evaluate this process, because what I wouldn't want is, I agree, I do want to spend time working towards something like that and evaluating, but I don't want to create a whole year of anxiety at the same time. So maybe we do some evaluation of how we came to these decisions, and just how to include, the community and other stakeholders in a way that doesn't make a whole year of anxiety at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Just how do we move towards maybe changes in the future based on a lot of different information, so just a thought.
I think with all the uncertainty, though, at least having those discussions will help decrease that anxiety rather than increase that anxiety. I think it needs to be known that we are working on.
Well, that's what I mean. Just some sort of
Stabilizing things,
plan
for sure.
that here's what we're working on in a way that.
And we'll have a better idea what our enrollment will be, late fall. We'll have a good idea of where we need to go, I think, and we need to start working on it way sooner, so that, we have a plan in place.
I do think that with some of the changes for our most fragile learners, that a 5-day calendar for next year puts our most fragile learners in school 5 days a week. And so I really value that for next year. Also, just for myself, just the support staff impacts are too great to make a change for next year. So we technically don't need a motion to stay in 5 days, but maybe we do need some sort of motion just to clarify for the community that we as
I do think that
as a
would help,
board.
and then we will bring to you that 5-day calendar with perhaps some options for maybe a switch from a Monday late start to a Friday early release proposal, and see if we can't maybe enhance a little bit of time for our teachers to have some time on those Fridays.
I move to direct district administration to bring a 5-day calendar with modifications from the calendar committee focused on PLC work for approval to the May 13th, 2024 regular board meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right, let's move on then to additional budget reductions. And
Okay, thanks, Chair Smith. Shannon, would you show the spreadsheet to the board, or Jake, I guess? Pull that up on the screen so that we can kind of see where we're at. So you've had a chance to kind of look at this and digest this for the evening. As Leslie has shared out, with the items that are checkmarked on and the items that are not checkmarked, your end result has an estimated deficit still of just short of $5,000. That we captured your request to perhaps not change any calendar this year, so nothing is clicked there. We did capture the repurpose one elementary school, and that is on there to create that result. And everything else I went through and I highlighted with you some of the recent modifications to the exchange to the proposal based upon the input and community comments and department recommendations, and that represents the current administrative recommendations that would result in just short of a $5,000 remaining deficit. And I think it is important to remember, as Leslie has shared, that places a dependency on utilizing a portion of that $3 million one-time funding that we're going to get to help kind of soften this for this year. And I suspect that you're going to be somewhere in that $1.5 million usage range is probably a conservative effort, a conservative estimate. 2% might even be better, which would be, using almost 2 to 2.5 million of that $3 million. We will know that final end number here soon, but we won't know that before the June's budget. Will we know that by the June budget, Shannon?
Well, we're going to try to balance this budget to zero, and we won't know if we have to dip into reserves until we start going into the fall, and then throughout the spring when we get our working budget more dialed in, and get some estimated actuals. But
so we'll be operating basically on a zero. There'll be just no built-in revenue or built-in reserve contingency funds for next year.
How do you have an ability to at least get that number to zero? Is that what you just said, or no? Did I misunderstand?
It's a pretty trivial amount. I'm confident I can.
Still $5,000.
Yeah.
I mean, I know compared to our whole budget it is, but it's still,
and
still negative.
This is such a fluid budget. Things change daily. We're really like my accounting manager Mallory is just really spending countless hours just try to see as much accuracy as possible. So these numbers will change, but we will get you an adopted budget as fast as we can, or a proposed adopted budget. But we will balance it to zero.
Thank you.
This revised recommendation actually addresses several of the concerns that I had with the previous recommendation. My remaining none of this is anything I want to do, but my biggest remaining concern is the psychologists. And I know that our assistant principals in our elementaries deal with increased behaviors, and I know they do a lot of really good work. But if we cut one assistant principal position, we could add one more psychologist back approximately. So, and I would be interested in discussing that. So.
I'd like to discuss that as well. From just talking to teachers throughout the district, I know that in the buildings where we have the telehealth psychologists, they really rely heavily on their APs. But in the buildings where they have physical psychologist in the building with them, it relieves some of that stress for those APs. So I would want to consider what schools those are if we were going to cut an AP somewhere.
I'd be interested in that as well. I think we need to really look at that.
We have to just tighten the heck. I mean, again, there are there are, I'm sure, this budget is chock full of things that we want, and some of it does impact student achievement. However, it doesn't feel like we're in the position for many wants right now. So it's just, we have to, again, I know that you are getting rid of things on here and cutting things that feel extremely uncomfortable and you don't want to. But even just some things, if we were able to pause them, you know, and again, it's kind of like going on vacation. You pause it, or you pause this piece and you turn it off. I don't know how much we have in this budget to pause on spending or what we can do in-house, but those are the things that I would look at first and foremost. Saving one psych is immeasurable.
As we've spoken about many times, none of these cuts are, everyone is important. Everyone's job is important, but I feel like we need to keep these cuts as far as away from our students. So the people that work directly with our students are the ones that should be least impacted where possible. And yeah, a pause, I think, is wise.
If
No,
I
it's
may,
not forever, but we're in the position financially that we have to be able to we have to be uncomfortable like everybody else is uncomfortable. Ellie mentioned that the last meeting. Every one of these decisions, frankly, stink. They're not something we would have chosen to do. But here we are. So we're going to all have to make decisions and be uncomfortable. Hopefully this will be short term. I'm hoping this will be short term, but I think a pause on some things would be a prudent decision for us to make.
yeah, if I can just address all of these options stink, right? They're not good for kids in any choice. The reason that the psychologists are on the list from my perspective, and I'll speak just specifically as a superintendent, the 8 psychologists that we have in our buildings that work are great people. 3 of the 8 we cannot get to work full time. That's not an option. They, as Frank shared, they work 0.7, 0.8, and 0.9 of a schedule. So they do not work full time at their demand. We have no choice but to contract out with other services, and those services cost 1.5 times more than the psychologists that we have in our presence that work with our students. So that's the challenge, is it's the dollar, it's the trade-off. Sure. If we choose to keep a psychologist, what you're choosing to do is essentially keep 1.5 of a face-to-face in our building psychologist that doesn't exist, because there's not any psychologists that we can employ. We've been trying to do that for a long time, and Frank's done a good job. So these are contracts that you're going to keep. To me, again, just speaking as Sean, that's where that's trade-off to me is more valuable to the district to trade off than losing the benefits of our assistant principals that work with every kid in the building every day, and will have a bigger responsibility next year with no coaches to lead the instructional component, which is tied to our strategic plan. So you can see there's just a lot of considerations in all of this. I am floored, to be honest, that we would even consider cutting any psychologists, because you can't get people. It's the same with speech and language pathologists. It's the same with nurses. You can't. But to your point, Trustee McAndrew, we're unfortunately not in a situation of plenty anymore. We're going to have to make cuts in various different avenues, and that's where these recommendations have landed.
So if you've got these positions that we contract out and we know that that's, not ideal, is what can we do with the ones that we do have in-house what would it take to fill those positions? Because I'm thinking you increase salaries 5% for the ones that, you know what I mean? Carve out the ability to give them make them an offer they can't refuse so that you can avoid the waste, not the waste, but you know what I'm saying?
Sure, the overspending on the
Yes.
contracts. Yeah.
And maybe there's no balance there, but I guess I'm intrigued. It's kind of like the traveling nurse thing.
Thunder.
Oh, wow.
When Jimmy speaks.
That was awkward. So, and again, it may be pie in the sky hope, but just finding out if that's.
I would defer to Frank on that. I think for all staff, right? It's about work environment, and that's what helps staff remain and want to come. And being a school psych is a challenging position.
It is. It's a very challenging position. So it's been ongoing years of trying to fill the positions. We've been fortunate enough to fill them with interns, but as I mentioned before, when you bring on an intern in a school psych position, they have to be supervised by an experienced school psych. So you're kind of doubling the load for that current school psych that we have. So those are running out. The interns are not coming. They're staying in Washington because we really don't have a close enough program in our area. So we rely on Gonzaga and Eastern Washington, their programs. And the reason we're able to get them is because when we bring them on as an intern, we pay them as a first-year school psych. A lot of other places don't do that. So that's how we're able to kind of draw them. But the problem is we have them for 1 or 2 years, and then they go back. They go back to Washington because they've done their time. They've now done their intern. They've done prior to whatever it is, and then they go back to Washington and get a position over there. So that's kind of what happens. It's become a revolving door.
So does that present a potential for that just to be the platform that you invest in with U of I, or?
Could be.
I don't like it. I don't like training everybody up to send them across
No.
but if we know that that's our model, is there a way for us to embrace that?
Possibly. I mean, it was a model that we have because it's kind of out of necessity,
Yeah.
But
Put some lipstick on it, I guess.
yeah, basically. But
People going back to Washington, obviously, if that's where they live, but also is it salary?
yes, it's usually salary driven.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm curious to know, with the psychs that we do have on that aren't currently considered as full-time, are they refusing to do that full-time because their load is already so much that within the hours that they do put in, they're
No.
going home and doing a ton of work on the side kind
No,
of thing?
some of it is, their own family dynamic, so they may have childcare issues or something along those lines. So it wasn't brought, at least to my attention, as it's because of the workload. It was because there were outside issues that they had to address.
And by getting rid of these contracts, how much is that going to increase the workload on our already huge loads that our psychologists have?
It's going to increase because every
Well, I know
school
it's gonna
psychologist,
increase, but I
every
mean,
school psychologist will probably be responsible for at least 2 schools. Where, in the past, what we've tried to do is if a psychologist had 2 schools assigned to them, they got a bigger school and then a smaller school in terms of caseload. So we're really going to have to figure that piece out, especially by repurposing Bora. Some of our other schools that were considered small schools are going to be
Bigger.
medium-sized schools, possibly. So we'll have to figure that out too.
I feel like our psychologists, especially with moving our Bora students, I just don't see how we can do with less of them with all that we've got going on right now. This just doesn't seem wise to me. Just my thoughts on it.
And is our state superintendent, is she kind of addressing this in some capacity. Maybe I'm making that up, but just kind of carving out.
That I'm not 100% sure at all.
Shannon?
She made some valiant efforts to try to get a weighted per pupil count into the funding formula, so extra funding for students with special needs. That, of course, failed. So they are going to go out again to try to revamp the funding formula to be a per ADA model with weighted, with weights for special education and low income.
I'm sure she's going to try again next year. Many things failed the first time out, and they come back.
She
and
has
make
already
the
kind of
tweaks
made the
and-
commitment at the legislative roadshow that they're absolutely going to go
I'm sure
after
she's
it
gonna
again.
bring that back.
Yeah.
So maybe this year she'll have,
At the risk of being very unpopular, let me give you an idea where we kind of sit. If we were fully funded on the psychs that we have on staff today, if we could have the 12, our ratio would be 1 psych to every 875 students. To give you an idea where that sits, in Washington, there's only one district in Eastern Washington at West Valley schools that is 1 to 760. Everybody else there is 900 and above. In our area, the psychs to student ratio is 1 to 1,120 in one district, 1 to 924 in another district, 1 to 1,216 in another district, and 1 to 1,533 in another district. You can see the caseloads in other districts are significantly higher than what we have here today. I know our psychs work incredibly hard, and they do a lot of extra things as well. So I don't want to minimize the work that they're doing. If we fund 8 psychs for approximately 9,200 students, we would be at 1 to about 1,000, a little bit more, about 1,100, which would fall much more into line with where we are in Northern Idaho and be right at where they are at Meade School District or Spokane Public Schools or Central Valley High School. So it's kind of Central Valley Schools. So they'll kind of give you an idea of where we are in terms of psychs to student ratios.
Now, is that accounting for the percentage of SPED students that we're dealing with in our programs right now?
I think right now everywhere in this area is really close to the same percentage of SPED students. I'll let Frank speak to that. But I don't think there's a huge differential that I'm aware of, and that's I'm out of my lane
Hearing
now.
that a lot of families are desiring our district over others
Correct.
because of the program that we offer, and that's one of the things that's been growing that student population so
Frank address
greatly.
that.
So I'd love for you to speak to that. I know our psychs really play a vital role in dealing with the behaviors that we're dealing with in our classrooms too, which is something that I'm concerned about with enrollment and teacher retention. So
Yeah. So our percentage is about just under 13% in our school district. When you look at some of the smaller school districts, more like if you go out towards Silver Valley and Kellogg, they're about 20s. It's a smaller school district, so the numbers just work out that way. I'm not 100% sure what Post Falls is, but I would guess that they're pretty similar to us. And same thing with Lakeland.
That's good context, though.
thank you.
Trustees, additional thoughts or where we want to land that? I mean, that's probably the bigger, the question next is where to land that piece of the conversation. I mean, since we're on it right now, and
I mean, would it be a motion?
I don't think so.
No.
This specific item, at some juncture, we would like to have a motion to approve the administrative recommendations as presented so that we can take a snapshot here and capture this as it exists. Because I think the community, we need to make sure that there is a memorialized conversation of what we said we're going to do. So eventually, for this third and last action item, it would be to approve the administrative recommendations as presented, and then we're going to take this and lock it up so nobody can make any changes, and there's this will get added to the board packet. So
Well, if we decide to make changes to what's presented right here, though, then it would be a modified.
we will make those modifications right now.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear on that.
Yes, we would want to have that be as accurate as we possibly can. I think you can see that the conversations are many and very detailed, and I do want to just give credit to everybody that's been involved in making these specific recommendations. They weren't flippant and just quick. There's a lot of work that's gone in. There's no question, as Leslie pointed out, we're going to have to do a lot of things differently with any of these changes that we've already been talking about. And so the way we've been doing things are going to change in a lot of areas, and our school psychs would be one specifically. I don't believe that they are that we're setting them up in a situation where we would be out on a isolated branch, so to speak, from any other districts around us with our ratios. There's no question, as Eric has even shared, our psychologists are great, and they provide a great service, and they do lots of things in our schools that have helped relieve loads from others, and they've been very heavily involved. They may not be able to do that so much. We may have to rely on them to primarily do the assessments of our students, and that may be about the max they can work if our numbers continue to go up. I don't know, but that's the conversations, and again, because those four are contracted services that we significantly pay for, it seems to me that that's the better option than our administrators, our assistant principals. Our schools, other than one that doesn't have any ability to get bigger, they will all get bigger with the closure of this one school. So that's going to shuffle around a vast majority of our schools and our sizes there, which also, again, as I said, principals are kind of number 2 on the list from an academic achievement impact to students next to teachers.
Just for my own clarity, again, all of our vice principals right now are MTSS trained and dealing with working with our.
Patty, do you want to come address that?
Only because just of the increased behaviors and needs, all that. And so I just want to.
Sure. Yeah, I can confidently say that all of them are trained in MTSS. When I came here, we were doing a deep dive with Equity MTSS, some training that had been brought in from outside, but that's a lot of the PLC work that I came here with. It's a major focus for the elementary team for sure. One area that we've delved deeper in the 3 years has been the other side of MTSS besides academic, the behavioral, teaching and learning, and all the different tiers that we implement with our kids. And so we're coining it MTSS-A for academics, MTSS-B for behavior.
So if our psychologists are no longer leading the MTSS work, who would lead that?
So very thankful as well for those bright minds that we have with our psychologists. My expectation and the training that they've been getting and that we collaborate on as a leadership team is that any principal can lead MTSS. And it's my understanding in most of our schools that's a partnership. That's if the psychologist is there for both of those sides of MTSS with their schedules too, trying to make that happen. I am not concerned at all about the leader's ability to do the MTSS work that needs to be done with their leadership. I guess I would add one area too, a different kind of team is the multidisciplinary team, and I know that Mr. Mayor could talk about that. That is definitely utilization of our psychologists, where then we are reviewing the kids that are served with an IEP, looking at their progress, and there's a background there that they help with. those don't come up necessarily, or every child as often as we would explore the plans that kids have through MTSS. So that there could be a limited amount of time that the psychologist would need to be in the building then.
Trustees, is there, I mean, we can click on and off things, we can accept. Mhm. I mean, or admin can and do that
So,
work for us
I
and do
mean-
the math for us and.
Because we are making several of our elementary schools bigger, I don't want to click that whole assistant principal box, but I am still interested in moving maybe half of that assistant principal box to psychologists. That's where I am.
Dr. Hawker, can we
Say I fall in line with
click
that too.
on that, please, and do some of that work, Shannon, just so we can see where that puts us?
Maybe. I don't know how they would. How should I-
Shannon was geared up to do that work and to click on and off, so she'll.
I'm just.
I'm watching it happen on my screen.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Where does that put us? Oh. Doesn't seem right.
Yeah, it's just not adding in for
Yeah,
some reason.
it's making our deficit
Is it,
grow.
is it because the?
It should be. Well, if you take.
There's just so many expenses that we don't know about.
Maybe-
In regards to this, that's the thing that's.
Right, there's the updated amount. Taking away one, so only reducing by 3 psychs now is 261. Before it was, let's see, 348, and then at doing one assistant principal is 115 now.
So is that accurate?
That's the updated
So that's
surplus.
accurate now.
It just.
And Shannon, is that because of the
An
unknown
assistant
costs
principal
and-
costs more than a
It's just- yeah,
psychologist.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
I'm comfortable with these recommendations. I mean, I don't love them, because I don't want to do them, but given what we have, I'm comfortable with this.
Does that put us with psychologists now? So we.
I think we, I love clicking the boxes and checking the boxes. I do feel like there's a time and place where we have to get a little granular on some of the expenses. And again, just to see what's plausible, what's not plausible, what's plausible, what's not plausible. Didn't think that would rhyme. You know, I mean, because essentially those are cuts that are not on the sheet. But I feel cozier about this. I do think we have to have I love this increase ADA by 1%. I feel like we have to have some teeth to that, or some sort of education with our parents about what that does. I mean, that just seems like low-hanging fruit. It would fund so many positions if we increased ADA by 1%. So hopefully we have a concerted effort there. I like the. It's hard to argue against two. vice principals. Because there's other pieces here that, my concern is that, bless you, that we can't decline, like, it feels like there's holes for us to be declining services that can wind up biting us.
I mean, we have the option to modify the budget throughout the school year on a vote, right? Yeah, I mean,
This gives them kind
so,
of a
you know, if we
framework.
find we have holes, then, it's not like we're locked in for the whole school year.
So if we accept this, we can modify it whenever we need to.
I mean, I know we have the budget hearing and stuff, right?
Yeah,
So-
June.
At any point, you have the authority to modify the budget.
Okay.
This just gives you kind of the skeleton to move forward with and actually make decisions.
Well,
I'd
because
love to
Shannon's going to
see-
take this and do all the work between now and when you bring back the
Yeah,
actual budget.
I mean, we'll have updates, of course, and then we'll bring this back, review again. Then you can, we'll then have the hearing, and then 2 weeks after that, there'll be 2 weeks for you to continue to ask questions, and then we can adopt it. And then throughout the fall, as we kind of assess how these impacts are affecting the district, when we know more about our enrollment, and even in the spring when we have a better idea of new revenues for the following year, along with our entire levy campaign, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, and I'd figure out what the impacts are going to be.
Trustee Anderton, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to see a couple of, they're somewhat small additions to what we have here at this point right now. And maybe we have some discussion, and that's something that you bring back to us when we have our budget hearings coming up. I would feel better if it was something we could add today, and I think that it would definitely help with some of the morale and confidence as well. I know I hear a lot of feedback as far as Schoology is concerned, not being utilized to its full potential, being cumbersome to work with, teachers really not loving it. Also been told that Google Classroom is something they could use to do the same thing, and it's free. So if we're paying $35K a year for Schoology, that is going to bump us up here a bit and give us a little bit more cushion. And I'd like to at least have that discussion as far as that's concerned, as well as the HRS certification part. I know we decided as a board that that was something that was going to be part of our strategic plan. That's what we're going to do moving forward. However, right now, with us having to make all of these cuts, doing the certification and paying for it just doesn't seem
Let me
beneficial
address
to me
that
at
real
this
quick
point.
because it's already paid for. So HRS Level 1 certification has already been paid for. 6 of your schools are going through that this year. The remaining schools will go through that next year. That's already been encumbered and paid for out of our ESSER funding. So there is nothing long-term down the road budgeted for additional certifications for our schools. That will be something that we will have to specifically address, whether that's through building budgets or whatever. So level 1 is already funded, correct, Mike? Yes, I see him nodding.
For all of our
For all schools, so 6 this year and the remaining schools next year. That's already accounted for. So that buys us that time to do that. Again, it's about $7,000 a school to go through that process, but it's also back to the transparency piece. I think it's very important so that we have a outside company tell us and share with our community that you're doing these things. That's the benefit. And so the goal is to get through the first 3 levels to show that. Level 4 and 5 would not be a necessary push, but the first 3 create that confidence within your community that you're doing the right work, and I think that goes a long ways to building our community trust. But long story short, we have the first level already funded through ESSER. Those monies have already been spent and sit in their account, so we wouldn't be saving anything next year by cutting any certifications to HRS anyway.
Okay, so no additional, because I totally agree with you. I think it's admirable. It's just, it doesn't sound like something that's in the back pocket of a school district that's wiping out so much right now.
Yep.
You know,
I think
and
we're a year down the road from that. We can see what enrollments are doing and all those trends, and then come up with a plan, if there is a plan, for the following year. But next year, level 1 will be wrapped up by the rest of our schools, and have that opportunity for certification.
Can I also ask on the PLC consultant that we have coming in, and I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, that's something we've already budgeted and paid for, and if not, can we pause that?
Correct. Those were also all used out of federal ESSER funds.
Yeah.
So there was no general budget expense to that professional learning community group work.
And how much longer do we have her on contract for?
Now I think it's done this month.
It's done. Okay,
This year.
so she's
This
done.
year. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I hit this, and I feel like everybody just expects you to have crossing guards at your schools. You know what? Rebecca's going to roll her eyes at me, but there's some pretty squirrely. There's some squirrely streets that are. I mean, our Rotary group just put in a crosswalk at one of the schools. I don't know. It's for $30,000. I'm going, let's find some pause dollars, I'm going to call them, to shore up that and the OT, and I would get behind this 1,000%. Those are my 2 hang-ups there. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but those are just...
Trustee McAndrew, I am a fan of our crossing guard.
Yes, I know.
Especially crossing Harrison, now that our Bora students are going to cross Harrison to get to Bryan. And so, let me
No,
just be clear.
I know. I feel like I'm nickel and diming, but if you got somebody that moves into town, the first thing. I had a coworker who kids were, first year in school, and if she wouldn't have known, if she thought there was no crossing guard, she would lose her mind. She knows what I'm talking about right now. So it's just one of those things that you feel like comes with the territory of sending your kids to school, and maybe that needs to be revamped. But I feel like a kid would get hit every day of the year if there weren't crossing guards. Maybe I'm out of my mind there. Well, it kind of feels like it. Maybe you drive slower than the people at our schools. I don't know.
If we removed crossing guards, that would put us back at like negative 7,000.
Is that something just
So it puts us at negative, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
At negative 7,000. Can we go back and direct Shannon then to find $7,000 in our $100,000 budget when you bring it back to us?
I was going to make a suggestion for, do all of our schools have PTOs or some kind of fundraisers? Is that something that could be raised through fundraising to pay? I mean, I think most parents would be on board if they could help. Obviously, if you can't,
so
or not.
our PTOs, PTAs, fundraisers are they're already so generous. But it definitely is, there's a thing called the Safety Patrol.
Oh, I love that. Is that with their
It's
seniors?
sponsored by AAA. So Dr. Nelson and I have a meeting next week.
Oh, I love that.
With the Safety Patrol. And it's actually PTAs go in and sponsor. And really it's, you kind of elect a really special, group of students to help assist with a teacher, or it could be another staff member who act as the Safety Patrol. It was my lifelong dream to be a part of the Safety Patrol when I was in 5th grade, and I was denied that chance. So that's why I am
You're laughing at him
incredibly
now, aren't you?
passionate about researching the Safety Patrol, but it's not, it's not a jokeable matter, of course. Just trying to provide some levity to the really hard evening. But yeah, I mean, we can definitely, we've got a great Hayden, PTA president, on our Smarter School Spending Program. So I'd love to mention that to her and see how we can facilitate the conversation.
So I would be interested, and for sure, if we can get some volunteers or like a safety patrol thing, that would be awesome. I worry that some of our schools will be able to pull that off and some of our schools may not.
That's my worry as well.
So
Well, if it's the pleasure of the board, let's leave it unmarked, and that will be an expectation that we provide, and then we will go to work to see if we can't get it provided by volunteers and by this safety
much as we
patrol
can.
as much as we can. And again, then at the worst case scenario, Shannon has to find $7,000 to create a balanced budget out of everything else. And realistically, that's not in the grand scheme of $100 million budget. It happens a lot. There's no, one staff member leaves and another staff member comes in and takes their place, and there could be a salary difference right there. That's why, again, you just got to plan that 1% to 2% of contingency funding within your budget because of those kinds of variables. You might have a rookie teacher that leaves and hire in a 15-year veteran also. So you just have to, things ebb and flow like that in the big picture of things, and that's why, again, as much as we can, we will try to take care of all those little things for you, so that you're not having to make those decisions of which pencils and papers and things that we might buy, and follow our policies to bring you the bigger ticket items.
Are we in a spot for this? I mean, at least for today.
I think so.
Okay.
We have a good show.
Yeah, I think that one thing, we don't have some of those revenue growth pieces down there. I think continuing to do the work of the good things that 271 does and to push those out. Dr. Hucker, there was a list you provided earlier, I think even today to us, of the things that 271 provides that some of our surrounding districts and the things that really make us a quality, incredible school district. Need to continue to be pushed out. We need to continue to listen to our community and process those things, which might cause people to choose other options, But I think we continually are focused on the good that we do and listen well and make adjustments. Some of those other boxes down there for the increased revenue and the increased growth will continue to happen. Is there a motion then, I think, to accept this then as presented for today?
I move to approve budget reductions as presented on the spreadsheet currently, and also direct, do we need to do the reserve part of it?
I would recommend holding off until we adopt the budget. And really, we're talking about FY24 in that case. If you recall, when we committed those ESSER savings to Fund 430, we didn't do that until September, when books were actually closed and we had a better idea of what was going on. So I'd recommend holding off on that, and we could do a budget modification for FY24.
Okay, so for now, I move to approve the budget reductions as currently on the spreadsheet.
Is there a second?
Can we have a little more discussion?
Yeah, let's have more discussion. Can we have a second, though, maybe, and then more discussion? Just on that motion?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion?
Before I really want to totally settle on what we're looking at right here, I'd really like to hear some sort of commitment from our leadership that there's going to be some bigger sacrifices made, as far as maybe we do need to sell that DO. Maybe you guys do need to go ahead and move into that building that we're going to be repurposing now that we have decided that
We
we're
will
gonna close.
present that
And I wanna
as some
continue
additional information. I think,
conversations.
again, our as I have shared, our current reserve balance is so low and so close to not being enough that any dipping into that is going to present a long-term challenge. And that is where I've shared out with you, regardless of perspectives, when you move 50 people into a classroom for office space, there will be expenses with that. You have to run internet lines. You have to get power where you need power for your equipment. It is not set up in a classroom like that for 5 people to use that office. So there will be expenses, and we just need the money to have that. And we need that money in advance, because I can't sell the office and not have a place for your people to pay, to make payroll and do the things that we need to do. So it's a chicken and an egg scenario. We have to have that reserve funding in a place where we would have some money, and then we can, and in the meantime, I will get estimates and costs for all of that. Again, that district office was purchased long before my time here, and as you can tell in the market today, it does not appear that it has appreciated very much, if any. We have gotten those estimates. There's the price per square footage is we've got a good comp right down the road from property that's available. So unfortunately, the building might be better off to rent it out and create some revenue coming in that way. That would be awesome. We need a year or so of rental so that we would have some funds to be able to do those power runs and those things that are required. But that is certainly something that we can look into and
Okay.
And so potentially we could use that facilities funding money for a renovation someday if we needed to.
I believe that would be allowable.
I'm just putting that out there so we don't have
that
that.
I would want to on that point. But I mean, we already have like 25 students in a classroom with their Chromebooks that are just fine getting on the internet and getting their work done that they need to do. I don't understand, and I don't think our community understands why that would be so difficult for our teams
staff.
from the DO to modify the way they do things. As well as, I mean, we watched our teachers and counselors at Lake City when they got flooded move into the library and make that work. We watched our students and no, but they make it work. And sometimes we just got to make things work. So I think this is discussion that needs to
I mean, I
continue.
visited the library when the counselors were in there, and they had no privacy. So whenever they needed to discuss with a student, they had to stand up and walk to another location, and only one counselor could at a time. And it worked short term, but it's not like it was a long-term solution for our counseling staff, from my observation.
There are those smaller offices, counselors' offices, smaller rooms within Bora that can be utilized for those purposes, though. It wouldn't be quite the same scenario, and there are places to have those.
Are we moving the Early Learning Center to Bora?
we are
How much of that building will that
90
occupy?
students or so. So
We still have a lot of space.
they'll there's 300 in there now. Again, the conversation is just simply, I wished it was super cheap and we would just be done and we would just do it. You saw the cost estimates for taking this wall and pushing it 30 feet and just simply creating a bigger room so we could have board meeting people here, and you were at hundreds of thousands of dollars. So all I'm suggesting is that without having spent the time to get a cost estimate of what it might cost to take a school and turn it into a functional office space so that we can have multiple people in one space, because no one person at the district office needs an entire classroom to do their work. You're going to have to divide that up. You're going to have to create confidentiality, walls that create areas where you can have conversations with people without having leaked information to others. There will be simply costs. And all I'm suggesting is, whether that's a couple $100,000 or $2 million or anywhere in between, we currently don't have that revenue. Now, could we use some of these new funds that are coming in? That's a very good possibility. And I think we will, at your request, we can look at that even further and get those cost estimates and be able to present to you a better estimate of where we're at. I have repeatedly stated that a district office is not some ivory tower building that we all are grasping onto so hard that nobody ever wants to leave. It's quite frankly, the utilities half the time don't work in there. It is nothing like that. It is just simply the best opportunity that we have right now to be under one roof and do the work that is needed, whereas decades ago, this district was spread out all over town, paying all kinds of money in all kinds of facilities to operate, and there were a lot of efficiencies created by bringing that team to one roof. And that was long before I got here or many people from the district office currently got here. It was a long time decision ago. So I know there's been conversations of just sell it, and people still think it's worth $10 million. If you bought it for $2 million back then, it ought to be worth 10 today. I wish that was the case, but the estimates are nowhere near that case. Not to mention that our realtor experts tell us that the market is soft and interest rates are high, and so to sell that building is going to, I can't guarantee you when we'd get those funds. It could be 2 years down the road. We just don't know.
Well, until that happens, I mentioned this the last meeting, if we do have any space, subletting that out would be a stream of revenue that we could look at now. So
and as I've shared with you
there
too,
was one space. If we lose
I'll show you that one
positions-
space. We did have one small little cubicle space rented out for about $600 a month,
Well, something.
which did help. Yes, and those that they have moved out because the hotel's getting closer to be finished. But outside of that, there's no space in there.
Well, while we
There
continue,
might be, if we let people go, there might be some more space if we're looking at reducing some of the DO. So just something to think about.
and while we're having these conversations too, looking at the possibility there, are there any of those positions within the DO that can be remote and work from home? Let's free up some more space so that we can be renting out more of that space in the meantime. And I've been talking to quite a few of my own realtor friends at the moment and getting some estimates from them on their idea of what the district office could be worth at this point in time. And I'm hearing upwards of 4. I know you're hearing more like 2. So, I mean, even if it's somewhere in the middle and we end up with 3, that's
Yeah, sure, anything's
it's a
possible.
significant help to our reserve fund, especially.
So, Dr. Hawker, maybe I think there's more information to be gathered and eventually be brought back. I think maybe a little bit of history. I mean, as long as I've sat on the board, there's always, I don't know that I know the full history of how that all happened. I do remember when the district office was in a brick building on Sorensen's playground
Campus.
and visiting that. And so I remember that time. But that district office, as long as I've sat on the board, has been in the community a point of contention. And so maybe we need some more historical understanding and information brought back to all of us just to
We will do that.
It's worth exploring. Absolutely.
yeah. So thanks.
Thank you all.
So we do have a motion, motion and a second, right? So we had a second, and then we had further discussion, and then are we ready? Let's all in favor of aye, opposed? All right, all in favor. Thank you all. Dr. Hucker, do you want to bring back the proposed for
Yes.
information? This is strictly for information.
Thank you. Yes, the last item on there is again just for information. We wanted to present to the community and to the board the proposed attendance zone changes for next year with the repurposing of Bora Elementary. And so our wanted you just to kind of see those lines. You've got a before and after. I know it's tough to see up on the screen, so I'll let Jeff kind of give us a highlight of those specific changes, and then we will plan to bring that to you at your May board meeting, and that will give us time to also solicit additional, anybody that has any comments, we'll be able to.
Maybe we could see a side-by-side view.
Jeff, can you pull both up at the same time and do a side-by-side shot for them? Just
So I did have a question. Ramsey does not have an attendance zone, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
So, Jake, can you help me? I don't know how to get these up side by side. Is that?
Sorry, I mean, just be easier for people to see.
We'll try and do that. So, what you're looking at right now is.
So
the
these
current-
additional students sending to Ramsey are, we show 79 students probably going to Ramsey.
Correct. Yeah, so
just-
yes, Ramsey is a magnet school, and that is, we're aware of that. We would, if you read there is a policy on magnet schools, right? We would probably have to make a modification to that policy that we would bring with the formal approval of these recommendations for attendance zones to carve out a zone for Ramsey in a magnet school.
Oh, okay.
Did you get that?
Well, there is an attendance zone on the updated map, but there is not currently an attendance zone.
Correct, right.
Right.
And so, yeah, Ramsey's a magnet school, and so there is an overlay zone that gives Ramsey students,
Right.
some students, a priority in their lottery, right? And
Yeah.
right now, there's been, no problems getting into Ramsey because, they have so much capacity in there, right? And so the levels of,
So I guess I'm wondering, why wouldn't we just add this to the overlay zone?
because the overlay zone is simply a priority for those students to go to that. And so the other overlay zones that we have just give, if a student in that overlay zone wants to go to Ramsey over going to Skyway, then we will provide transportation in those overlay zones. And it was an incentive to try to get kids to go to Ramsey and help relieve some of the capacity pressures at Skyway initially. And so if we do the same thing there, we would have a whole block of students that we don't know where they would go, right? They would have to be assigned a zone within these other schools that probably don't have the capacity for it at that point. So we need some students to go to Ramsey because Ramsey has quite a bit of room.
Okay.
And so we need to, that's one of the schools that needs to receive some students to make
So under this
balance.
proposal, Ramsey would have an attendance zone and an overlay zone.
Correct. Yes. And we'd have to make a modification to the policy for that. And we'll bring that when we make the final recommendation to the board. We're looking at that policy now.
And this will be sent out for general public comment or specifically, I'm just remembering back to last time we did zone changes and just the need for parental impact. Parental input,
So
sorry.
well, let me back up. So basically what we've done in creating these boundaries is we looked at the potential receiving schools. We looked at where students are. We geocoded all of them. And as we started to create the blocks that you see on the right, we looked at that to come up with a balance. And so we looked at our special needs programs. We looked at the capacity of the receiving schools. We looked at several of those different factors to create the best balance that we could for this. And so we looked at several large blocks to do that. I think another advantage that you see here is the Bryan, we call it the Bryan Island, right? You have that area up into the north that would drive past Bora to get to Bryan. We've now tied that in together. So I think that's one of the pieces that is an advantage to what we have here. So looking at all of those different components, we were able to put together this proposed map of where we think, and the balance is also in your board packet as well, of where students would go. But generally speaking, you'd have about 114 going to Bryan, 36 going to Fernan, 4 going to Winton, 8 to Dalton, 79 to Ramsey, and that's a pretty good balance based on the capacity of those receiving schools.
But
So-
open enrollment would still be available.
Open enrollment would still be available, yes. Yep, we're an open enrollment district.
Any
So-
financial implications, since we just got done?
Right. No, not that we can see. Like we were asked a question, would this impact transportation? Would there be a negative impact to transportation financially? Bora has one bus that serves Bora, and that bus would likely be taking those kids in that Ramsey zone to Ramsey. Possibly we might need 2 buses in there. But we are always adding and subtracting routes throughout, so I don't foresee a financial impact to that. I would guess we'll probably have a route that goes off the board somewhere else that we would route into to help handle that. And then, the existing routes within Fernan, Bryan, Winton, et cetera, would be able to serve those students that would be rezoned into those new schools. So the board will formally approve this. So this is a first look, just so people can look at the work that we've been doing to put a draft out there of what we're looking at with the potential rezone and what this would look like.
Any further questions for right now? This will come back to us again, and so thank you for starting this work. Great. We have additional meetings on May 13th. That'll be our next regular meeting. May 20th, we are scheduled for a workshop. And yeah. Any further comments tonight? Then is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all.